Chapter 714. Thus, under the strange gazes of the special service personnel around him, Audiobook put on his belt again, his face flushed red. Fine, in any case, there had been endless controversy about him in the outside world ever since he had taken over, so a few more misunderstandings actually didn't matter. Besides, as a man, what was wrong with being a little perverted? If you wanted to survive in this world, being thick-skinned was always the #1 rule of survival. Do you have anything else to say? Audiobook looked at Myriad Face's old man, who had been captured. Myriad Face's old man actually wasn't very strong, but he had been able to escape the law time and time again because of his freakish transfiguration skill. Just now, Audiobook had completely widened his horizons. To be able to change his appearance in an instant wasn't something an ordinary person could possess. 6 nascent soul special service personnel took action to suppress him. Myriad Face's old man himself never expected that he would actually fall here this time. He stared at Audiobook and snorted coldly. I'm not the only expert the Dark Network has mobilized this time. You'd better be careful. Audiobook was startled. It turned out that Myriad Face's old man wasn't the only one who had come to deliver himself. But from the intelligence they had gathered earlier, it was indeed possible that they had missed information on Dark Network members. Should we arrange for an interrogation? One of the special service personnel asked. Audiobook nodded. Bring him back for interrogation at once. You can contact Warden Liang for the rest. If there's anything new, he'll contact me directly. Yes, Director Zhua. The special service personnel stood solemnly and saluted Audiobook. Then, they detained Myriad Face's old man and walked him to the patrol car on the side of the road. Audiobook felt that Myriad Face's old man probably wouldn't give up so easily. Not only were these Dark Network members unregistered rogue cultivators, most of them had criminal records, and wouldn't confess so easily. Audiobook knew that in recent years, the state had been investing a huge amount of money in a plan to crack down on the Dark Network, but it was often only when the plan was actually put into action that it was fraught with difficulties. The unregistered rogue cultivators of the Dark Network weren't quite the same as the Dark Forces. At the very least, the Dark Forces were organized, but the rogue cultivators of the Dark Network were all self-employed. They might be employed by the same force, but there was no interaction between them. This was also one of the main reasons why the Dark Net had always been so difficult to break into. Previously, when he had found out that Night Chief's second President Dylan had disguised himself as President Han Di of the vaccine company, Secretary Dakong had already asked him to be on guard against this matter, and the lead on Myriad Face's elder had been dug up by following the vine to the melon. But he hadn't expected that apart from Myriad Face's old man, there would actually be someone other than President Dylan mixed in with the medical team. This was an unknown variable. Audiobook felt that it was very necessary for him to inform the people inside. After entering Beast King's remains, the internal and external signals were completely cut off due to crossing space. Audiobook had no way of contacting them at all. There's no other way. Audiobook sighed. Now that things had come to this, there was only one way left. Even if he went in himself, regardless of whether Myriad Face's old man would hand over the truth in the end, or who was the person who had infiltrated the medical team. As a scapegoat, if something really happened inside, at the very least, he had to stay by his master's side and be prepared to be a scapegoat at any time. Audiobook didn't think that he and Wang Ling were like Junjun and Tao Tao. He was a competent disciple. At the same time, in grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's luxurious villa in Wenxian Garden, Little Silver and Wuji were anxiously waiting for news. When Beast King's remains had opened earlier, they had almost instantly sensed the fluctuations between heaven and earth. The blood of a holy beast flowed in Little Silver's veins, and Wuji's materials were made from the skin of a holy beast. When Beast King's remains had opened, the two of them had clearly sensed the faint phenomenon of heaven and earth. As the last holy beast on earth, Little Silver felt that he should explore Beast King's remains. But he definitely couldn't directly reveal himself in front of everyone. There were a lot of experts in the team this time, and once his true holy beast form was seen through, it would be very difficult to explain what would happen next. Thus, Putting all this together, Little Silver took the initiative to contact Little Master Odd Jua a day before Beast King's remains opened. According to the original plan, Odd Jua could go with the team, but now that Little Silver was included, he had to think of a way to set up another team. A few minutes later, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal received a message from Odd Jua. Inside, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, who was maintaining the cultivation forum, said, "Brother Silver, you can set off now. Brother Jua will be waiting for you in the northern square of Peiyuan district." "All right." Little Silver got up excitedly. Just as he was about to leave with Wuji, he suddenly asked, "Grenade-throwing, are you really not going? Brother Tu is still treating that girl in gray. He sent me a message earlier saying that he needs me to buy some medicine and send it to the island. Jin Shi and Yin Shi are helping with alchemy, so Brother Tu is a little understaffed." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal sighed. He really wanted to go, but unfortunately, someone had to stay behind to help. Before entering Beast King's remains this time, Immortal Toya had originally been appointed as the captain of the medical team, but in order to wake up that girl in gray, Immortal Toya could only decline the job. The main reason was that everyone was very curious about that girl in gray in the Kun's belly. Furthermore, this was the only lead they had at the moment that was the mysterious angler. Thus, Odd Jua didn't have to wait long in Peiyuan District Square. A tiny space fissure formed in the middle of the square, which then gradually blossomed like a lotus flower. A silver-haired, fair-faced young man and a long-haired girl covered in bandages stepped out of the fissure. Spatial teleportation, this was Limitless Sword God's own ability. At that moment, it had only been 5 or 6 minutes since the rainbow glass box had escaped into the space vortex at the entrance to Beast King's remains secret land. Not long after Odd Jua's call, Wuji used her ability to bring Little Silver over. No one else saw this scene. Because the entrance to Beast King's remains was classified by the state, all nearby surveillance cameras were closed off. Coupled with the fact that traffic had already been restricted on the surrounding roads, no one else saw Little Silver and Wuji appear. "Little Master." As soon as Little Silver landed, he immediately greeted Odd Jua from a distance, and then skipped over. "Is everyone here?" Odd Jua looked at his watch. "There's one more person, he'll be here soon." Apart from the 3 of them, there was one more person in the special operations team that Odd Jua had set up this time, Fatty Luo. Fatty Luo had always been obsessed with the extinct, 1000 dried bone, in Beast King's remains. This time, it was the perfect opportunity to collect the 1000 dried bone. Of course, this collection was in compliance with the rules. Before Beast King's remains opened, Odd Jua had already reported it to Secretary Dakong. This 1000 dried bone would be his year-end reward this year. Odd Jua didn't care about the year-end reward at all. Money was a worldly possession. Of course, this was not the scariest thing. The scariest thing was that this mechanical arm was actually humanoid. Also, for some reason, Odd Jua felt that it was very familiar. Fatty Luo caressed the mechanical arm with great pride. The hand model of this mechanical arm was made based on Lord Jinka's human form. Doesn't it give off a very special feeling? Odd Jua, and it can even make sounds. The voice is also an imitation of Lord Jinka's. Fatty Luo wanted to press the button, but Odd Jua immediately stopped him. "Teacher Luo, it's getting late, why don't we show it later when we have time? The important matter is more important." Odd Jua felt that things were starting to develop in a strange direction. At this point, Fatty Luo hurriedly nodded, but he could not help but show a disappointed look on his face. Odd Jua and Little Silver would never be able to forget this scene, it was a face flushed with honey. Fatty Luo pressed the button with a regretful expression on his face and withdrew the mechanical arm, his face beaming. "Director Jua and Brother Little Silver, if you have the chance and want to try it out, let me know at any time. It's so comfortable to sleep on the mechanical arm at night." Everyone, as expected, wasn't this the real reason why he brought rolling wheels in? On the other side, the exclusive van of Songhai First Prison's Mahjong squad had already arrived at the entrance to the fake remains. In the van, apart from the old devil, evil sword god and the master of Immortal Mansion were excellent swordsmen. Thus, General Bai had already given them magic swords, which were commonly used by the military and were produced by a military factory. These magic swords only had built-in artificial sword spirits for industrial use, and were of streamlined quality. Of course, the quality of military magic swords was absolutely up to standard, but for a sword Dao expert who was used to using swordplay, this kind of magic sword wasn't good enough. Evil sword god, is this kind of lousy sword fit for my venerable self to use? Is this kind of lousy sword fit for my venerable self to use? Is this kind of lousy sword fit for my venerable self to use? Is this kind of lousy sword? Is this kind of lousy sword? Uses, sword? The vein in General Bai's forehead twitched slightly. If you say that again, I'll blow up your tongue. Evil sword god, I'm sorry, my venerable self was wrong. The old devil and the master of Immortal Mansion Qingyu, General Bai cleared his throat and said in a low voice, there may be devil disciples among the people we're dealing with this time, so I hope that the three of you can do your best to make amends for your mistakes. Master of Immortal Mansion Qingyu, devil disciples? To be more precise, devil disciples are actually people of the devil world. General Bai said solemnly, although we can't be 100% sure at the moment, we have already received relevant leads. There may indeed be devil disciples among the Dark Network members recruited by Night Chief this time. The old devil frowned, as if recalling something. The east connects to the demon world, and the west connects to the devil world. I remember that the entrance to the devil world should have already been destroyed in a great battle between Western cultivators. That's right, the entrance to the devil world was indeed destroyed at that time. In the last few years, monitoring data from various countries shows that the entrance to the devil world has already been reopened. General Bai said, so while it looks like our mission this time is to wipe out these foreign rebels, it's actually to investigate leads on devil disciples. Before we officially get off the bus, I need to explain this clearly to the three of you. Do you have any other questions? If the mission is successfully completed, how can your punishment be reduced? The old devil asked. That depends on your final outcome. The death penalty can be commuted to life imprisonment. Life imprisonment can be commuted to fixed-term imprisonment. Of course, given your crimes, you'll be sentenced to more than 2,000 years, General Bai said. Of course, that doesn't rule out the possibility of a subsequent mission to reduce your sentence. My venerable self understands. The old devil gave an enigmatic smile. Looks like Devil Emperor is very confident. Hee hee, do your best, the old devil, after all, my venerable self isn't a devil. Chapter 716. The Rainbow Glass Box led all the teachers and students in the square, as well as Huaxiao Alliance's official team of experts and medical team members, through the space fissure. When Wang Ling was sucked into the glass box's world, he found that the inside of the box had already been decorated like a dormitory. This rainbow glass box wasn't just a magic artifact for traveling through space, it was also a magic treasure that could be used as a residence. The moment they entered the rainbow glass box, many students suddenly understood why the school notice hadn't required them to bring tents. It turned out that they would be living in this magic treasure for the rest of the day. Because the space was large enough, the inside of the glass box was divided into more than 100 zones, which were only a very small part of the interior of the glass box. Each zone was managed by a teacher who would lead the team, who would take attendance every day and arrange activities and tasks. In addition, in order to take care of each other, all the dormitories this time were double dormitories. Of course, double dormitories were double dormitories, and boys and girls would still be separated. I even brought my own tent. Some students were a little disappointed. Summer camp or whatever, it would be at least half as fun if they didn't live in tents. But in the end, there were still sensible students. Let's listen to the teacher's arrangements. Although there aren't any high-level spirit beasts in the remains, it's still very dangerous. If we live in tents, something might happen if we can't control them. In the end, it was for the sake of the students' safety. At the very least, it was much safer inside the rainbow glass box than outside. Moreover, in this trip, there were some sightseeing activities that were carried out in the rainbow glass box. It was said that the entire rainbow glass box would become transparent, and all the students would be able to see the scenery outside from the box. This reminded Wang Ling of when Father and Mother Wang had taken him to the Wild Spirit Beast Garden as a child. In the Wild Spirit Beast Garden, everyone had to sit in a special bus and couldn't get off at will. They could only go sightseeing in the bus, so in some sense, there wasn't much of a difference between the two of them. While the box was traveling through space, the dormitory assignments had already been completed. The major zones in the box had already been assigned beforehand. There were only so many students under each lead teacher, so the allocation of dormitories was very quick. It was fine as long as the boys and girls were separated reasonably. Wang Ming's zone was in Zone 36. When the dormitories were assigned, Super Chen and Dopiguo shared a room, but Wang Ling still hadn't heard Dopiguo's name. At that moment, Wang Ling already had a bad feeling. In the end, Wang Ming smiled at him. Finally, classmate Wang Ling and I will share a dorm. Wang Ling, he knew it. But right after Wang Ming said this, Wang Ling noticed a lot of envious gazes directed at him. F***K, Wang Ling is so lucky. By the way, it seems that Wang Ling's luck has always been pretty good. No wonder he's our class mascot. That's right, that's right. It just so happens to be in the same room as teacher. I still have a lot of questions to ask teacher. Wang Ling has struck gold this time. Many people couldn't help but whisper to each other when they heard the final list of dormitory assignments. In a flash, Wang Ling was once again pushed to the crest of a frenzied wave of discussion. Actually, Wang Ling could understand why. After all, the teachers who had been selected by Huaxiao Alliance to participate in this summer camp were definitely the most outstanding group of teachers. There was a saying in the cultivation world that a master's guidance was better than 100 years of hard work. Actually, Wang Ling felt quite aggrieved in his heart, because in terms of cultivation, Wang Ming this idiot couldn't be considered a master at all. Fine, the summer camp hadn't even started, and this idiot had already made Wang Ling hate him again. At that moment, Old Antique's voice came over the PA. Students, the space travel is about to end, and we will soon enter the secret land of Devil Valley through the space tunnel. All teachers and students, as well as staff members participating in this operation, please enter the dormitories that have been arranged for you to rest for the time being. In 2 hours, the rainbow glass box will fly to the central safe zone of Beast King's remains. Our first stop will be the base station in the central safe zone. The summer camp this time was only 5 days in total, so it was impossible to completely explore Beast King's remains. Because Beast King's remains didn't open for a fixed period of time and was very short, only less than half of it had been explored by the official expedition team at the moment, and the entire western half of the map was black. This base station in the central safe zone had been temporarily set up the last time they had entered Beast King's remains. It contains samples of many extinct resources and introductions to their functions, and was a little like an exhibition hall. This was the first stop of the summer camp, mainly so that the students could better understand the resources in the remains. The best way to distinguish between poisonous plants was, of course, to rely on themselves. After that, everyone returned to the dormitories that had been arranged for them. Wang Ling walked with Wang Ming, while the head of state who was pretending to be head of state 001 followed behind Wang Ming in an invisible state. For some reason, Wang Ling felt that there was something wrong with this head of state 001, but he didn't dare be completely sure. After all, this was the first time he had heard of a humanoid magic treasure. He was just surprised that the degree of restoration of this humanoid magic treasure was a little too high. All the dormitories had the same configuration, they were very spacious and had individual bathrooms. Most importantly, they all had floor-to-ceiling windows, so everyone could see what the rainbow glass box was doing as it flew. When they reached the dormitory door, Wang Ming ordered Head of State 001, alert mode. Then, Head of State 001 very obediently stood at the door of the dormitory. "You're not letting him in?" Wang Ling raised his eyebrows and asked. This is our dormitory, why would we let a humanoid machine in? Also, let me tell you, both of Head of State 001's eyes are recording devices, even if we take off our underwear inside, it will record us. Wang Ming sighed. Wang Ling, after saying that, Wang Ming cupped his chin in thought. He felt that it was a little strange to leave Head of State 001 at the door like this. Thus, he ordered again, patrol alert mode. Hearing the order, Head of State 001 started to move. Wang Ming set Head of State 001's patrol range to be the area where the staff lived. Seeing Head of State 001 leave on foot, Wang Ming turned to Wang Ling and said, "You should have noticed, right? Someone has snuck in on our trip this time, and is among the medical staff. I'll send Head of State 001 over to see if they make any movements." "What if they fight?" Wang Ling was curious. "No, Head of State 001's original design concept wasn't for fighting," Wang Ming answered quickly. Wang Ling. Wang Ming, although Head of State 001 is indeed equipped with weapons, these weapons are for protection and defense. According to our country's philosophy, peace is, of course, the main theme that will never change. Wang Ling, Wang Ming, so the slogan that was originally designed for Head of State 001 was, "Use the meatiest clothes to take the most vicious beating." Chapter 717. In the conference room on the top floor of the Huaxiao Alliance building, President Qi watched the remote broadcast from a distance. Because of the spatial fault, ordinary communication devices were no longer able to reach inside the secret land, so the Huaxiao Alliance conference room, which was under President Qi's command this time, used a spatial sound-transmitting magic treasure to capture the spatial ripples in the secret land and use a repeater to transmit voice and images back. Watching Wang Ming continuously issue commands to the head of state who was pretending to be Head of State 001 in the video, General Yi broke out in a cold sweat on the side. "Old Qi, isn't this a little bad? What's bad about it?" His Excellency the Head of State approved it himself. President Qi smiled. Actually, the Head of State had always been a very playful person. His Excellency the Head of State has a command relay device on him. Even if this kid Wang Ming sends out a remote command, His Excellency the Head of State will know right away. President Qi stared at the image with a meaningful smile on his face. This kid Wang Ming has always thought that he's very smart. Who would have thought that he would fall into our trap this time? Actually, it looks pretty interesting. I wonder what this kid's expression will be when he finds out that he's facing a real head of state. General Yi, elsewhere, Wang Ling and Wang Ming were resting in their dormitory. Wang Ling was leaning back on the bed with one arm under his head, while Wang Ming was fiddling with his bottles and jars. This was a person who couldn't sit still at all. "Aren't you sleepy?" Wang Ling asked telepathically as he stared at Wang Ming's back. "Why would I be sleepy?" Wang Ming replied, but his hands didn't stop moving. "Before we set off this time, I took a soul-replenishing pill. After taking one, an ordinary person can stay awake for a long time like a cultivator. With my physique, I can probably last about 7 days or so. This thing is selling very well now, and those white-collar thieves like it very much. They've also given this pill a very nice name, Mommy Sudden Death Pill." Wang Ling. Wang Ming, Mommy doesn't have to worry about my sudden death pill anymore. Wang Ling. Half an hour later, Wang Ming finally clapped his hands and assumed a pose indicating that he had succeeded. He had been fiddling with a lot of bottles and jars on the table for a long time, but in the end, he realized that what Wang Ming had made was a very small crystal chip. It was transparent and very translucent, and was only the size of half a fingernail. Wang Ling didn't know what this chip was for. Then, he saw Wang Ming take out a heavenly materials sword from a charged storage ring, press a button on the hilt, and pop out a slot. Wang Ming picked up the chip with a pair of tweezers, placed it smoothly in the card slot, and then pushed it back in. It's done. It's an upgraded version of the Black Technology Heavenly Materials sword. Wang Ming held the sword with one hand effortlessly. Under his modification, the material of the sword had become even lighter. Even an ordinary person would feel as light as a feather when holding the sword. However, the key point was that the power of the sword itself had not weakened at all. Instead, it had been greatly strengthened. I've been working on this chip for a long time, and I'm almost done. Now, my heavenly materials sword can be considered complete, Wang Ming said proudly. What's it for? Wang Ling asked curiously. This chip is a voice-activated receiver. It has a very wide range, and it only works on my voice. I'll give you a demonstration. At that moment, Wang Ming directly put the heavenly materials sword 10 meters away from him, then spread his arms. Sword, come. Wang Ling saw the heavenly materials sword on the ground suddenly tremble slightly, and it actually turned into an aurora of light as it swiftly and accurately returned to Wang Ming's palm. Wang Ling, sword in hand, the expression on Wang Ming's face was relaxed and leisurely. Logically speaking, a normal scientist would be extremely nervous when they invented something, because basically all inventions were perfected bit by bit after countless failures. This was where Wang Ming's abnormality lay. As long as it was something that had passed through his hands, there was no such thing as going back to the furnace and remaking it. He basically succeeded on the first try. Wang Ming took out a handkerchief and carefully wiped the blade of the sword. Uncle called me earlier and asked me to take good care of you during this activity. Wang Ming, you attracted too much attention with the incident with President Bai. There are so many people at this activity, didn't you notice that a lot of students and teachers were staring at you when you were lining up in the square? Wang Ling nodded. Because it was true, when he had been in the square earlier, he had vaguely heard a lot of voices, and most of them were from students from other schools. Most of them knew that a grade 1 student from number 60 high had almost been killed by the Demon Hunters Association. Fortunately, Audiobook had suppressed public opinion in the media, and Wang Ling's photo couldn't be found in any news media. Thus, the students and teachers in the square who were curious about Wang Ling actually didn't know which student he was. Otherwise, Wang Ling felt that it would be very lively in the square this time. So you have to listen to me during this activity. If you can avoid doing anything, try not to, got it? Wang Ming stared at Wang Ling with a straight face. You know, there's a lot of hype about your autograph right now. It's a good thing Audiobook suppressed the photo incident, otherwise there would definitely have been a bunch of people looking for you in the square just now and asking for your autograph. Wang Ling was stunned. Actually, Wang Ling was far from expecting the impact of this incident to actually be this big. It's mainly because of some superstitious parents. They think that you've escaped death and are full of immortal chi. Furthermore, it's rumored online that you're number 60 high's mascot. Coupled with the fact that it's time for the college entrance exam, a lot of people want to freeload off your immortal chi. Speaking up to this point, Wang Ming took out his phone and showed Wang Ling a photo, then sighed deeply. This was taken by Old Li at the school gate after number 60 high's bus arrived at Peiyuan district this morning. Wang Ling stared at the photo and noticed that there was actually an incense burner at the school gate. Wang Ming put his phone back. This incense burner has already been removed, but you still have to be careful, got it? Parents nowadays were really crazier than the last. But some people just want an autograph. That's already very civilized. I heard that there are also some perverts who plan to put your photo in a silk pouch and carry it around with them. Suddenly, Wang Ming grabbed Wang Ling's shoulder. Little brother. Don't worry, Big Brother has the upgraded heavenly materials sword this time as well as the right to command Head of State 001. I can definitely protect you perfectly. You won't be harassed by perverts. As soon as he said this, a silk pouch fell to the ground. Chapter 718. As Wang Ming had said, considering the incident with President Bai of the Demon Hunters Association, Wang Ming indeed had to be more careful in his future actions. Especially in the last few days, while the incident seemed to have passed, the ripples caused by it had in fact only just begun. About half an hour after the announcement that everyone would be taking a break, the dormitories once again received news that lunch was ready in the canteen of Area 66 in the Central District, and those who needed it could eat it. Wang Ling looked at the time. It was already noon, which was around the same time as number 60 High's usual opening hours. Although the rainbow glass box was a spatial magic treasure, its interior was like that of a mobile immortal warship outside. The dormitories, canteen, and training rooms inside were all equipped according to military standards. There was no way to avoid eating. This summer camp actually wasn't as relaxing as imagined, so in order to ensure that every student was full of energy, it was necessary to replenish their stamina, and everyone had to eat. The canteen in Area 66 had a special check-in area, and no one could escape it. Like the dormitories, the check-in area was directly based on one's face. Entering the dormitories depended on one's face, and checking in at the canteen depended on one's face. Of course, apart from the students, the rest of the staff didn't have this strict rule. Do you want to change your appearance before going to the canteen? I can directly refresh your facial information in the system. Wang Ming turned his head to ask Wang Ling before they left. Wang Ling shook his head. In any case, no one outside the school had seen his photo. Besides, even if he used the Great Transfiguration spell, he was still wearing number 60 High's school uniform. Old Antique's eyesight was especially good, and he knew the names of all the number 60 High students this time. If he suddenly saw an unfamiliar student, he would definitely get into trouble again. So there was actually no need to change his appearance at all. As the two brothers walked out the door toward the canteen, Wang Ling heard Wang Ming mention a familiar name on the way. I heard that the nutrition consultant for Area 66 this time is number 60 High's Mother Wan. Wang Ling was startled. Mother Wan is here. He hadn't seen any sign of Mother Wan in the square earlier. Wang Ming, she's just a nutrition consultant. She just needs to give some advice from a distance, there's no need to come in person. Wang Ling. The lunch this time was very luxurious. The main dish was braised dahuan dan, and the side dish was steamed marrow cleansing pill. Moreover, this marrow cleansing pill was steamed with fish juice stock, which had a very strong fish flavor. The cafeteria was very spacious. Because it hadn't been long since the announcement had been made, there weren't many people when they arrived. The two brothers each took their lunchboxes and sat down in a remote corner, mainly to avoid trouble. Not long after Wang Ling sat down, he noticed that the black-faced Wu Zhenjuan from before had also arrived. Wang Ming looked at him and couldn't help laughing. Don't you think this Wu Zhenjuan looks a lot like you? But he's really black-faced, while you're just inwardly flirty. Wang Ling. Not long after the two brothers sat down, the number of people in the cafeteria suddenly increased. There were many students from other schools wearing all kinds of uniforms. The summer camp organized by Songhai City this time was for senior grade 1 freshmen. The general administration of 100 schools had previously announced that all the schools going would be decided by drawing lots. There were so many high schools in Songhai City, and in terms of qualifications, number 60 High, a key city high school candidate, had no chance at all. After drawing lots like this, all the other high schools naturally had no choice but to gladly accept it. The truth was that all the other high schools had drawn lots, but number 60 High had been personally selected by Secretary Dakong. Of the 6 big high schools in Peiyuan District, number 60 High was the only one participating in the summer camp this time. Of course, this wasn't something that could be told to others. Otherwise, the high school principals would definitely start fighting, so this time, Wang Ling saw a lot of students from other districts. For example, Remnant High's full name was Remnant Senior High School. This was a key city high school in the Hualing district, and the average cultivation of its students was at the middle stage of the foundation establishment stage. Number 60 High was left far behind in this regard alone. The most important thing was that Remnant High had a very high rate of Golden Core cultivators, with 6% of students breaking through the Golden Core stage before officially entering university. This number could already be said to be very exaggerated. To put it in layman's terms, there were 6 odd Zhuas in every 100 people. After all, Odd Zhuo was a rare cultivation genius at number 60 High in 100 years. The reason why he had been able to get into number 60 High back then was purely because he had made a serious mistake in his written test scores for the senior high school entrance examination. Otherwise, he would definitely have directly entered a key city high school. While Wang Ling was still pondering this, he saw a person in the uniform of Remnant High stroll unhurriedly toward their corner. Remnant High's uniform wasn't quite the same as that of a regular high school, it was a little like a combination of Chinese and Western styles. He wore a white shirt on the top and black stretched trousers on the bottom. Over the white shirt was a small robe that resembled a shawl, which looked very Western. This person had a pair of bright blue eyes and an air of nobility about him. At first glance, Wang Ling deduced that this person was probably of mixed blood. Wang Ling had thought that this person was looking for a seat, but he hadn't expected him to directly come up to them with a lunchbox. "Excuse me, may I sit here?" Wang Ming was about to refuse, but this person beat him to it and smiled at the two brothers. "Thank you." Then he directly put down the lunchbox and sat down next to Wang Ming. Wang Ming was stunned. This guy didn't play by the rules at all, he could just directly thank him and then sit down. The corners of Wang Ming's mouth twitched. Remembering that he was now a teacher and that he needed to maintain his poise, he swallowed his displeasure and exhaled. Wang Ling stared at this scene. For some reason, he felt that the canteen was filled with a very strange charaba. He took a look, and sure enough, he saw Zhai Yin coming over with a lunchbox not far away. Furthermore, he had directly chosen to sit down at the table behind Wang Ming, which naturally created a considerable sense of low pressure. To be honest, the food in the canteen at the summer camp wasn't bad, but Wang Ling had no appetite at all. The summer camp this time was a cultivation and study trip, and it was very clearly written on the list that snacks weren't allowed. Back in the square, the snacks that had been confiscated were enough to open a snack shop. Thus, Wang Ling hadn't had any crispy noodle snacks for the past few days, which had really been a little lonely and unbearable for him. Thus, he basically hadn't touched the lunchbox on the table. On the other hand, the mixed-blood young man sitting next to Wang Ming seemed to have a great appetite as he stared at Wang Ling's lunchbox for a long time. Then, the young man suddenly asked, "Excuse me, classmate, if you don't want to eat this braised dahuan pill, can you give it to me?" Before Wang Ling could reply, he heard the young man say again, "Thank you." Then, with a stab of his chopsticks, he directly took the dahuan pill away. Wang Ling blushed with shame in his heart. He was 100% sure that he had run into another weirdo. Chapter 719. Wasting food was indeed very bad behavior, but the problem was that this student was a little too familiar with them. Wang Ling watched as the other party directly swallowed his braised dahuan pill. The latter made a soft, sound, then took out a silver handkerchief from his pocket and gently wiped his lips with the elegance of a noblewoman in the capital. It looked like he was completely full. After a long while, he straightened his back and stared straight at Wang Ling. "It's bad behavior to waste food. This student doesn't seem to have an appetite, but it's probably not because the food here isn't to your liking. You must be deep in thought, right? And I can see that you must be distressed by what happened recently." To Wang Ming and Wang Ling's surprise, his words were actually pretty accurate. "I won't owe you this braised dahuan pill. I, Li Mingyao, have never liked owing other people anything." The very elegant-looking young man started to reveal his background, then looked at Wang Ling. "Tell me, what level of skill book do you want?" "I have level 1 to 3 here." Wang Ling and Wang Ming, "It's fine if you can't think of anything for the time being. Have you heard of a spell app called the 4 Cool Encyclopedia? You can download it, and you can choose any of the level 1 to 3 skills. I can help you get them," Li Mingyao said. Whether it was Wang Ling or Wang Ming, neither of them had any interest in a mere low-level skill book at all. After all, a casual yawn from Wang Ling might be more lethal than these low-level skill books. But a person who could casually exchange a skill book for a favor definitely didn't have a simple background. Wang Ming mulled over this person's name carefully. Li Mingyao, he somehow felt that this person's name was a little familiar. It was a pity that he wasn't in the lab right now, otherwise Wang Ming could directly use the official database to specifically pull up this person's information. "You don't have to doubt my identity, I'm not a bad person." However, Li Mingyao seemed to enjoy this kind of doubtful gaze. I often use skill scrolls to exchange, so for me personally, it's just a basic operation. The two of you probably don't know, but this braised grand revitalizing pill is a limited main dish available in the canteen this time. Therefore, this humble one thinks that using a rank 1 to 3 skill scroll is a favor and getting to know the two of you should be a good deal. Wang Ming's head abruptly shook at this heavily commercial tone. Suddenly, he stared at Li Mingyao. Are you from the Li family? Looks like this teacher is quite knowledgeable. Li Mingyao smiled. Among the 4 big families in Shanghai City, my Li family has opened a chain of online skills stores all over the country, and everyone already knows about it. However, very few people know that I am the young master of the Li clan. Wang Ling didn't care much about the 4 big families of Shanghai, but Wang Ming was well aware of them. Among the 4 great aristocratic families of Shanghai, Li Mingyao's Li family made their fortune by purchasing the copyrights of various original spells and selling them online. In addition to the Li family, which used skills as a means of commerce, the remaining 3 big families were the Zhou family, whose main business was refining artifacts, the Lin family, whose main business was spirit beasts, and the Sun family, whose main business was selling elixirs. Currently, the representative of the Sun family's younger generation was Lotus Sunday. These were the 4 major projects that currently occupied an absolute share of the cultivator consumer market. Ever since they had been commercialized, their income had snowballed continuously. In Shanghai City, the 4 big families now divided up the market based on these 4 major projects and stood on equal footing. Anyone familiar with this circle would know how powerful the 4 big families were, especially back then, before the nation's capital had moved from Shanghai City to Jinghua. The 4 big families had been existences that could shake Shanghai City. But that had already been hundreds of years ago, and Wang Ling hadn't even been born yet. What a big family was particular about was its history. So although a lot of time had passed, and the influence of the 4 big families in Shanghai City was no longer as great as it had been back then, the 4 big families had relied on the core elements they controlled to each occupy a portion of the market. This alone made people feel like they were far behind. Wang Ling carefully sized up this elegant young man, Li Mingyao, in front of him. It turned out that he had run into a super rich second generation like Lotus Sun today. I didn't expect you to be young Master Li of the Li family. My apologies. Wang Ming had a cheeky expression on his face, but there wasn't the slightest ripple in his heart. This was something that Li Mingyao had never expected. In fact, using his family's resources to expand his network and exchange resources was a very smart way. It would be very difficult for ordinary people to resist this sugar-coated bullet, but it didn't work at all in front of Wang Ling and Wang Ming, these 2 brothers. Grade 3 skills. In Wang Ling's opinion, they weren't as useful as crispy noodle snacks. Because he had been influenced by his family's resources since he was young, Li Mingyao had come into contact with all kinds of people, so he was especially good at reading people's words and body language. To be honest, even Li Mingyao himself hadn't expected to be treated so coldly today. Logically speaking, number 60 High was just a key city high school candidate, and the overall quality of the students there was a long way off from that of Remnant High. How could the students and teachers there not be the slightest ripple in the face of his temptation? Li Mingyao didn't quite understand this. In fact, eating that Dahuan pill just now hadn't been his original intention. His original intention had just been to eat the other party's pill, then find an excuse to use a skill to do him a favor, and then ask him about something he was interested in. But he hadn't expected this plan to actually fail. A mere foundation establishment student, surely he couldn't trade a grade 4 skill for it, could he? Although it wasn't impossible, Li Mingyao admitted that he couldn't learn a grade 4 skill. To learn a grade 4 skill, he had to reach the late golden core stage at the very least. Furthermore, the market price of a grade 4 skill book was 200,000 immortal gold bars. And this was just the average market price of a grade 4 skill book. If he encountered a rare grade 4 skill book, it was very likely that the price would be several times higher. This definitely wasn't a price that an ordinary family could afford, so, what should he do now? At that moment, the situation was awkward, and Li Mingyao didn't know where to start. Wang Ming, on the other hand, somewhat understood this young master's thoughts. Looking at Li Mingyao's conflicted expression, he asked with a smile, "If you have any questions, you might as well ask them directly. There's no need to beat around the bush." Li Mingyao was blank. Wang Ming had directly seen through his thoughts, but he still did his best to maintain an elegant smile on his face. "Then I'll ask, tell me first," Wang Ming said. Li Mingyao looked at Wang Ling. "I see that this student is wearing the number 60 high uniform. Then, do you know student Wang Ling?" "Wang Ling, Wang Ming, Li Mingyao, I'm his fan." Li Mingyao revealed a very refined smile. Luck is something that is illusory, but it is a real thing. As for the method of accumulation, apart from doing good deeds to accumulate immortal fate and luck, there is actually a very simple method, and that is to be with people with high luck. Wang Ming had a black question mark on his face. "Together?" "Ah, of course I'm not talking about growing old together. Being friends or brothers is fine too." Li Mingyao realized that what he had just said was indeed a little ambiguous, so he quickly corrected himself. "Luck is contagious. Do you know that?" Wang Ling and Wang Ming, Li Mingyao, in our Li family, there are 4 heirs in my generation, and they're all studying in different high schools. Furthermore, the other 3 are all abroad. Once we graduate from grade 3, it will be our family's young master succession ceremony. Choosing a young master should depend on one's own ability. Trickery isn't the way to go, Wang Ming said. He could more or less understand why Li Mingyao was so anxious to find Wang Ling. "No, this teacher doesn't understand. Actually, in terms of overall strength, our Li family's 4 heirs are actually pretty much the same, whether it's in terms of learning, intelligence, talent or other attributes. So in the end, the only thing that will decide the outcome of the young master's succession is luck." When he said this, Li Mingyao's expression was extremely urgent. "I've already said everything I need to say. This is why I'm so anxious to find Shifu Wang Ling." "Wang Ling, how did he become Shifu?" "Li Mingyao, you two probably don't know yet, right? Actually, classmate Wang Ling has a nickname outside the school." "Wang Ming, nickname?" "Li Mingyao, Fortune Emperor." "Wang Ling and Wang Ming, Li Mingyao, as long as you two are willing to help me find classmate Wang Ling, I'm willing to pay you a considerable sum. As for other conditions, you can also raise them. My Li family's resources should be enough to meet your needs." Wang Ming crossed his arms. "If we didn't know, would you have asked someone else?" There were a lot of people from number 60 high school who had come this time, and after the incident with President Bai last time, most of the number 60 high school freshmen basically knew what Wang Ling looked like, but contrary to Wang Ming's expectations, Li Mingyao shook his head. "No, I asked a lot of my friends from number 60 high school before, but they all said that they had no impression of classmate Wang Ling." After Li Mingyao said this, Wang Ming saw the corners of Wang Ling's lips curl up slightly, and it was instantly dawned on him. It turned out that this little brother had already tampered with it. No wonder he could come to the canteen so calmly. This was the upgraded version of Wang Ling's great shielding spell. It was only after the incident with President by this time that Wang Ling had specially adjusted this spell. With the help of the upgraded version of the great shielding spell, Wang Ling was like a signal tower, and only people within 3 meters of him could recall memories of him. Of course, there were also some people whom Wang Ling had designated to be on the white list and wouldn't be blocked. But most of these people on the white list were people who were usually close to Wang Ling. Apart from his relatives, there was also his scapegoat disciple Audiobook, his friends in the cultivation forum, and some teachers at school. Seeing that Wang Ming and Wang Ling weren't saying anything, Li Mingyao seemed to already be convinced that they knew Wang Ling, and he started to raise the stakes. "As long as the 2 of you are willing to help me find classmate Wang Ling, I'm willing to provide internal accounts for the 4 Cool Collection app, from level 1 to level 3, no. Level 4. As long as it's in the 4 Cool Collection, you can browse through level 1 to level 4 skill scrolls as you please." After Li Mingyao said this, Wang Ming and Wang Ling stood up at the same time. "Sorry, we don't know classmate Wang Ling, go ask someone else." Wang Ming patted Li Mingyao lightly on the shoulder. Before Li Mingyao could reply, Wang Ming immediately stared at him and shouted, "Thank you," giving him a taste of his own medicine. Chapter 721. After this incident with Li Mingyao, Wang Ling realized that he was now completely famous, and it was very likely that some of the big families in Songhai City had already noticed him. The 4 aristocratic families of Songhai that Li Mingyao mentioned before were a classic example. Being targeted by these 4 aristocratic families was enough to prove the severity of the problem. Fortunately, Wang Ling himself wasn't stupid, and had long been prepared for this. With the upgraded version of the Great Shielding Spell, it was almost impossible to find out anything about him, but this also made him a little worried. Previously, the Demon Hunters Association had been unable to track him, so they had started to attack the people around him. Almost everyone who was close to him was in trouble, and this time, was Night Chief's revenge plan, which was far away overseas, really just directed at him. Wang Ling felt that things weren't as simple as they seemed. There was about half an hour left after lunch, and under Wu Zhenjuan's direction, the rainbow glass box was about to reach the security base station in the central area of Beast King's remains. Before the box landed on the ground, all the dormitories received something, a custom-made intelligent wristwatch. Because all the students' electronic devices had been confiscated, Huaxiao Alliance had taken various factors into account, and specially customized intelligent wristwatches that could be used inside Beast King's remains. Furthermore, they had set up a temporary signal tower inside the rainbow glass box, which could cover most of Beast King's remains. This wristwatch did not have any camera functions, but it could be used to set up chat groups and discussion groups for students from different schools to communicate and get to know each other. Of course, the most important thing was that the watch was also a safeguard. There was a one-button SOS software inside. A light press of the button was equivalent to launching a virtual signal flare, allowing the rainbow glass box to immediately receive the student's location within the ruins. Like everyone else, when Wang Ling received his wristwatch, a chat group had already been set up. This was the total number of people in the Beast King's remains summer camp. There were more than 1,000 of them. Unfortunately, there was an AI identification function on the wristwatch. Therefore, everyone who joined the group was registered with their real names. As long as they put on the wristwatch, they would automatically join the group. Then, the software would automatically change the name according to the identification. In the end, as soon as Wang Ling joined the group, the number of messages in the group directly exploded. Wow! Wang Ling. Which Wang Ling? Don't tell me it's that Fate Emperor. What? Wang Ling had joined the group. May I ask which dorm classmate Wang Ling is in? Can I get his autograph? Classmate Wang Ling, please take a photo with me. Wang Ling, the upgraded version of the Great Shielding Spell, could block out people who wanted to ask for his personal information, and it could also be used online. But Wang Ling never expected so many people to pay attention to him after the incident with President Bai. Fortunately, the effects of the upgraded Great Shielding Spell were still very obvious. Although a bunch of people in the group were asking for news about Wang Ling, no one could answer them at all. Except for those from number 60 high, the students from the other universities in the group couldn't help sighing with emotion. Number 60 high was really united. So many people actually kept their mouths shut, and no one was willing to divulge any information about Wang Ling. Actually, everyone could understand. After all, a lot of the information was a student's personal privacy, and number 60 high might have already warned the students before they set off. After all, Wang Ling was still in the eye of the storm. If they didn't suppress this matter, it would really affect their lives. But the teachers and students of the other universities never expected that number 60 high, as a key city high school candidate, would actually be united to this extent. It wasn't just the teachers, even the students weren't willing to divulge any information about Wang Ling. What kind of spirit of unity was this? For a moment, a lot of students and teachers from other schools couldn't help staring at the screen and sighing with emotion. In the last few months, number 60 high had been in the news the most in Songhai City. One moment, it had been ambushed by killers, The next, it had been disrupted by the 1,000-year-old devil emperor during the military training, and the next, it had been the retaliation of a spirit beast poaching organization. In the end, number 60 High had resolved all of it one by one. It turned out that this was the power of unity. In the room, Li Mingyao, who had asked for information about Wang Ling before, was lost in deep thought for a long time. The dormitory was a two-person room, and Li Mingyao's roommate was Zhou Yuzheng, the third young master of the Zhou family, one of the four big families in Songhai City. In some ways, Li Mingyao and Zhou Yuzheng could be considered birds of a feather. First of all, both of them were the third young masters of their families, and they both studied at Remnant High. In addition, their realms were about the same, and they were evenly matched in the competition between young masters of the same generation. Hence, both of them were in dire need of luck. If they wanted to win the succession ceremony for the family's young master position after their senior year of high school, apart from improving their own cultivation, it would be best if they could make friends with someone with great luck. After the incident with President Bai, both of them had set their sights on Wang Ling at the same time, and had come up with a comprehensive plan to rope him in. Because the news reports said that this classmate Wang Ling was only at the middle foundation establishment stage, their plan to rope him in had been tailor-made. Not to mention a middle foundation establishment cultivator, they wouldn't even reject a late foundation establishment cultivator or even a golden core cultivator. The benefits and treatment they offered were several times better than what cultivators on the market usually offered. After seeing how tight-lipped number 60 High was in the chat group, Zhou Yuzheng and Li Mingyao were silent for a long time. After a long while, Li Mingyao was the first to speak. I never thought that number 60 High would actually be so united. I ran into a number 60 High teacher and a classmate in the canteen earlier. They clearly know about Wang Ling, but they refuse to say anything. I'm thinking, should we be more low-key? Zhou Yuzheng asked. Low-key? What do you mean? Think about it, if we mention the names of the four big families right off the bat, won't that be too high-profile, and will make people feel disgusted instead? Zhou Yuzheng analyzed unhurriedly, so I think we should move them with sincerity and quietly make a fortune. Li Mingyao, brother Zhou means, I don't think our position with classmate Wang Ling is very clear. If we want to ask number 60 High for information on classmate Wang Ling, we shouldn't show ourselves as young masters, that's too high profile. Zhou Yuzheng, so, we might as well directly say in the group that we're classmate Wang Ling's underlings. Maybe we can directly lure classmate Wang Ling out. Chapter 722. Zhou Yuzheng and Li Mingyao thought about it and suddenly felt that this plan was brilliant. It had completely reached the level of a god. No matter how tight-lipped the teachers and students of number 60 High were, could that classmate Wang Ling really continue to be indifferent to the two young masters of the Songhai family? At the end of the day, in the eyes of Zhou Yuzheng and Li Mingyao, the vast majority of foundation establishment cultivators did not have such high standards. The reason why they were so confident in this regard was that after the incident with President Bai, they had privately sent people to gather some information on Wang Ling, and the results showed that this student Wang Ling had once received government subsidies. Although he hadn't seen what the subsidy was, since he had accepted it, it was obvious that this classmate Wang Ling's family wasn't very well off. Zhou Yuzheng and Li Mingyao both felt that they had now given this classmate Wang Ling a way to get in touch with the upper class. As long as he continued to launch a sugar-coated attack, there shouldn't be any reason he couldn't win. Wang Ling already couldn't be bothered to look at the chat group, which was now filled with all sorts of questions. He wasn't used to having too much contact with people he didn't know well. Back then, Audiobook had gone through a lot of trouble to find him. In the end, the reason why Wang Ling had accepted Audiobook as his disciple wasn't just because Audiobook had given him a Crispy Noodle Snacks membership card when he had paid him a visit. In the end, giving him a card was just a bonus. Thus, what Wang Ling valued more was the connection between fate and destiny. Ever since the descent of the gate between worlds 6 years ago, when Audiobook had taken the blame for Wang Ling for the first time, this connection between their fates had already been formed. So for Wang Ling, Odd Zhuo was someone who had already entered his destiny, and was naturally different from a passerby. Of course, he had always felt that there was nothing special about him since he was a child, and that he was just an ordinary child who couldn't control his strength very well. He liked to eat snacks, watch anime, and pay attention to and discuss some hot news in society. Of course, he also liked the sugar-coated bullets that Zhou Yuzheng and Li Mingyao mentioned, but these things had to be done in the right way. Wang Ling really didn't dare take something that was given to him for free. The heavenly Tao law of equivalent exchange had been deeply ingrained in his heart since he was young. There was no such thing as a free lunch in this world. Everything has its own price. Hence, he couldn't be bothered to care about Zhou Yuzheng and Li Mingyao. On the other hand, Wang Ming was amused. That Li Mingyao just now was a typical second-generation rich young master. Wang Ming had initially been thinking about whether to tease this person and give him a demerit, but now things had become even more interesting. Two of them had come at once. Even the third young master of the Zhou family, Zhou Yuzheng, was drawn into it. This was double the fun. There was less than half an hour left before the rainbow glass box arrived at their destination, but Li Mingyao and Zhou Yuzheng began to stir up trouble in the group chat. Li Mingyao directly made an announcement in the group, as if he was making a public announcement. "Ah, my friends from number 60 high, it doesn't matter if you don't say anything. Zhou Yuzheng and I have already found classmate Wang Ling and acknowledged him as our big brother. If you don't believe me, you can ask him later." As soon as he said that, most of the people in the group were shocked. He didn't sound like he was joking, because if he was joking, he would at least add a funny at the end of the sentence, right? Moreover, this was a large group, and there were teachers from various schools in it. Li Mingyao and Zhou Yuzheng were the young masters of the Li and Zhou families, one of the 4 big families in Songhai City. At school, even the teachers had to give them some face, and didn't dare criticize them too harshly. Now, they had actually announced that they were that classmate Wang Ling's underlings. This time, it wasn't just the students and teachers from other schools in the group, even the students and teachers from number 60 high were dumbfounded. Given Wang Ling's personality, the first reaction of many people from number 60 high was that he wasn't this kind of person. Not only was his grades mediocre, he also didn't like to talk much. If it wasn't for the incident with President by this time, perhaps a lot of people wouldn't have taken Wang Ling to heart. To sum it up, in the eyes of many people from number 60 high, Wang Ling was a little like a lone ranger. It was only his classmates like Super Chen and Dopey Gua who didn't think so. It was true that Wang Ling usually didn't like to talk much, and had an aloof attitude toward outsiders because he wasn't familiar with them. But in the end, this bunch of people from grade 1, class 3 had been studying together for almost half a semester. Thus, when Wang Ling wasn't in class, Super Chen, Dopey Gua and the other students from grade 1, class 3 had once had a heated discussion about Wang Ling's true nature. In the end, they summed it up in one word: inwardly coquettish. But inwardly coquettish was inwardly coquettish, it really wasn't like Wang Ling to take in underlings. Thus, people from number 60 high began to question the authenticity of this matter. "Are you serious? Why don't I believe it?" The first person to raise the question was Dopey Gua, Wang Ling's deskmate. Actually, even if Wang Ling didn't use the great shielding spell, while the rest of the people from no. 60 high couldn't guarantee it, there was absolutely no one in grade 1, class 3 who would easily reveal information about Wang Ling to this bunch of people from other schools. As the saying went, a friend in need is a friend indeed. When they heard that Wang Ling had met with misfortune, everyone in grade 1, class 3 had been heartbroken for a long time. The most important thing was that the students and parents who had recently come to number 60 high to pay their respects to Wang Ling were actually pretty disgusted by them. "This Li Mingyao and Zhou Yuzheng are fishing, aren't they?" Super Chen analyzed in the room. He and Dopey Gua had been assigned to the same room. Actually, anyone who used their brains a little would be able to guess what these two rich young masters were thinking. But even so, there were still people who took the bait. Li Mingyao and Zhou Yuzheng's words instantly stirred up the mood in the group, and there were even people who were asking for Wang Ling's room number. This is a good opportunity. Li Mingyao's face lit up when he saw the constant messages in the group. As long as someone asks that classmate Wang Ling later, we'll know who on earth he is, Zhou Yuzheng said with a smile. In the end, no sooner had Zhou Yuzheng and Li Mingyao finished talking than a system notification immediately came through in the chat group. System notification, user, Li Mingyao, has been muted for 6 hours. System notification, user, Zhou Yuzheng, has been muted for 6 hours. Li Mingyao and Zhou Yuzheng. Wang Ming had activated his skill, the authority muting spell. It was Wang Ming who had designed this internal chat software to begin with, and he had the highest level of authority. Muting 2 people was a piece of cake. Done. Wang Ming clapped his hands. Daring to bully Wang Ling. These 2 guys had guts. Chapter 723. Wang Ming's power to mute them caught Li Mingyao and Zhou Yuzheng off guard. They were from the 4 big families of Songhai, and even the headmaster had to be respectful when he saw them. There was actually a teacher who dared to directly mute them. Li Mingyao and Zhou Yuzheng felt that this was inconceivable. The most important thing was that they were in the main group. Being banned like this, the 2 of them instantly felt like they had lost face. What would the people in the group who knew their identities think of them? Instantly, Li Mingyao and Zhou Yuzheng felt like they had suffered a setback. Li Mingyao was also stupefied. I'll go look for our teacher and ask if he can unban us. All the lead teachers in this summer camp chat group had been set up as administrators. Li Mingyao pondered the feasibility of this method, and then quickly started to send a message to the lead teacher. In the end, the message directly turned into an exclamation mark, which was a sign that the other party hadn't received the message. System message, during the ban period, you have been placed on the private chat blacklist, and you have no right to private chat with anyone in the group. Time remaining for the ban, 5 hours and 58 minutes, Li Mingyao and Zhou Yuzheng. Being banned also had a blacklist effect. What the hell was going on? Wang Ming could already imagine the flustered and exasperated looks on these 2 young masters' faces. He had just set up the blacklist effect. Wang Ming had expected that Li Mingyao and Zhou Yuzheng, these 2 young masters, would definitely ask the lead teacher to lift the ban in a private chat, so he had spent about 30 seconds rewriting the new rules just now. Apart from Wang Ming and Wu Xinjuan, who had the highest administrative authority, the other administrators could only be banned and not unbanned. Furthermore, once they were banned, they would be blacklisted by the system based on the duration of the ban. This sort of, in for a penny, in for a pound attitude was quite in line with Wang Ming's temperament. The point was that it wasn't just Li Mingyao and Zhou Yuzheng who were stupefied by this ban, even the teachers from Remnant High were shaken when they saw it. Then, Li Mingyao and Zhou Yuzheng's lead teacher directly sent a private message to Wang Ming. Teacher Wang Shower from number 60 High. Why did you mute my student? The lead teacher was called Yuan Hua, and he was a graduate of Jinghua Imperial Teachers College. Before confirming that they were going to participate in this summer camp, Wang Ming had looked up all the teachers' information. This teacher Yuan Hua's qualifications weren't simple, and the chief commander of the team this time, Wu Xinjuan, had in fact graduated from this Royal Teachers College. Furthermore, back then, Wu Xinjuan and this teacher Yuan Hua had been listed as outstanding graduates of the century. Their photos were still hanging in the university's history museum, and there were very few people who could obtain the qualification to graduate from the Royal Normal College in the past 100 years. Including teacher Yuan Hua and Wu Xinjuan, Jinghua Imperial Normal College had only given awards to 7 people in total. Because of this, these 7 graduates were known as the 7 Academies of the Emperor. Considering the future development relationship between number 60 High and other schools, Wang Ming tried his best to reply to this Remnant High teacher in a calm tone. Teacher Yuan, your student is spreading rumors about my student. I'm already being very polite by only banning him for 6 hours. Anyone who spreads rumors outside will be detained for at least 7 to 15 days if it's forwarded more than 500 times. So many people in our group saw it, and I'm only banning him for 6 hours. I'm already giving Remnant High and you a discount. This teacher Yuan Hua was speechless for a moment.
What F *** King discount? Teacher Yuan Hua took a deep breath and tried to remain calm. Teacher Wang, you should know the identities of these two students, right?
I do.
Wang Ming quickly replied, they are the three young masters of the Li and Zhou families of Songhai's four big families.
So I'm banning Li Mingyao and Zhou Yuzheng. What does it have to do with the three young masters?
Yuan Hua, Teacher Wang, for the sake of the future development between our two schools, I think it's better if you unmute them. The rainbow glass box is about to land at the base station. Can you bear the responsibility if the students on both sides become unhappy because of this? Wang Ming had to say. Teacher Yuan Hua's words actually made a lot of sense. Number 60 High was a candidate for a key high school in the city, while Remnant High was a famous key high school in another district. Students from such a key high school had a very strong collective sense of honor. Although everyone had come to this summer camp for the purpose of learning and to make progress together, in fact, in the process of learning and broadening their horizons, there were also activities similar to high school competitions. And this was what Teacher Yuan Hua was probably talking about. What if those Remnant High students disregarded their friendship in the competition and went all out? Seeing that Wang Ming hadn't replied for a long time, Yuan Hua was a little impatient.
Teacher Wang, have you thought about it?
Wang Ming typed in reply, let me think about it a bit more. After about 2 minutes, another system message popped up. System message, user Yuan Hua has been banned for 6 hours.
Yuan Hua.
Everyone, as a graduate of Jinghua Imperial Teachers College and a special grade teacher with the title of Emperor's 7 Schools of Learning, Yuan Hua was actually very popular at Remnant High. Not only were the other teachers at Remnant High dumbfounded by this sudden ban, many of the students instantly voiced their dissatisfaction. A Remnant High student directly asked in the main group, what right do you have to ban Teacher Yuan Hua? Wang Ming wasn't in a hurry to answer, and instead sent a screenshot of Teacher Yuan Hua's previous chat history. Teacher Yuan wanted to talk to me in private, but we're all cultured people, how can we bow down to the rich and powerful? However, the Remnant High student didn't buy it.
I don't believe it.
This picture is definitely photoshopped. Teacher Yuan is so cultured, he wouldn't do such a thing. How can a teacher from number 60 High allow this girl to slander him? Wang Ming laughed and swiftly replied, silence is golden, can a cultured person's ban be counted as a ban? The student who had argued blushed and couldn't help retorting, so what if you have authority?
Wang Ming, sorry, I have authority, I can really do whatever I want.
Everyone, on the other side, the muted Teacher Yuan Hua had a gloomy expression on his face. He had Wu Zhenjuan as a friend to begin with, so it couldn't be considered a private message at all, and he hadn't been blacklisted by Wang Ming.
Wu Zhenjuan, isn't this Teacher Wang a little too much?
Teacher Yuan couldn't help complaining.
He should apologize.
After a long while, Wu Zhenjuan replied. That's right, he should apologize. What I mean is, take the 2 students who have been muted and apologize to him. Chapter 724. Wu Zhenjuan's words silenced Teacher Yuan Hua, because his serious tone didn't sound like he was joking. It wasn't until that moment that Teacher Yuan Hua realized that Li Mingyao and Zhou Yuzheng, these 2 young masters of Songhai's aristocratic families, might have really provoked a big shot who couldn't be provoked, even though he didn't know who on earth this big shot was. Everyone in the group was using their real names, so it was impossible for them to be fake. Staring at Wang Ming's fake name, Wang Shaoer, Yuan Hua racked his brain over and over again, but couldn't come up with a single clue. Who on earth was this Wang Shaoer? Teacher Yuan Hua's mind was a little blank. Just before the rainbow glass box landed on the ground, Li Mingyao and Zhou Yuzheng received a message asking them to apologize to Teacher Wang Shaoer when the box landed. In order to highlight the seriousness of the matter, Teacher Yuan Hua had personally come to their dormitory this time to tell them about it. In the end, Li Mingyao and Zhou Yuzheng had no choice but to leave.
But the two of them hadn't quelled the fire that was chasing after Shifu Wangling. On the other side, General Bai had led Songhai First Prison's mahjong squad into the fake remains along with the team of experts and the foreign forces dispatched by Night Chief. They had entered disguised as a medical team. Everyone was wearing a large white coat, and they had made a simple disguise on their appearance. This fake remains was a small world that had been specially created. The layout inside was a perfect replica of the environment inside Beast King's remains, and even some of the vegetation had been restored. The place where they had landed was the fake central base station in the fake remains, which looked exactly the same as the real one. Everyone stood in front of the base station. Saraira grass. The old devil's gaze was fixed on a three-colored grass which gave off a rainbow halo. This was Saraira grass, a completely extinct resource that had once been the main ingredient in making the 9-cycle Saraira pill. The 9-cycle Saraira pill was a powerful healing drug that could bring the dead back to life, and was also known as the resurrection pill. Even if one's golden core was shattered or their nascent soul disintegrated, a 9-cycle Saraira pill could immediately turn the situation around. The old devil remembered looking up the price of the 9-cycle Saraira elixir on the black market when he had just been born. Since the disappearance of the Saraira grass, the price of the 9-cycle Saraira elixir had skyrocketed, and was more than 100 times more expensive than before. Its price was comparable to a first-grade sacred artifact. While the old devil was pondering this, several foreign forces who had been hiding among the experts in the ruins flashed past and swiftly scattered in all directions. These dozens of figures each displayed their own divine abilities and fled extremely quickly. Riding on all kinds of magic treasures, he flew in all directions. One of them even boldly stretched out his hand in an attempt to snatch the Saraira grass that the old devil was eyeing. Ha 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 ha. I got it. The man took out a scythe magic weapon, and after harvesting the Saraira grass, he stepped on the scythe and quickly escaped. They took off the robes of the experts to reveal the exclusive pitch-black cloaks of Night Chief. The logo on the cloaks was a purple sunflower wrapped in black wings, which looked a little frightening. General Bai's gaze swept across the area and immediately counted all the streaks of light that had flown out. There were a total of 53 foreign forces in this wave. This number was exactly the same as the number of people they had targeted when they had entered the fake remains. General Bai distributed several pocket watches to the old devil and the others. This is radar tracking. Apart from the mahjong squad, everyone else must split up. If you run into a troublesome opponent, you can press the button on the radar, and the people nearby will immediately rush over to support you. They should soon realize that these are fake remains. To prevent these people from working together to break through the blockade, please capture them as quickly as possible. What should we do with the resources that have been stolen? Someone asked. Don't worry about them, they're fake to begin with. General Bai waved his hand. These are all high-quality replicas. The head of state has a floral arrangement master who can create fake resources that are lifelike. In order to set up these fake remains, this master worked overtime for half a month. Then why does the Saraira grass still glow? Well, this is what the floral arrangement master learned from the fake merchants. Previously, Huaxiao Alliance cracked down on a group of fake merchants, some of whom sold fluorescent face masks. Later, the floral arrangement master learned this method and used it to arrange flowers. After them. At General Bai's command, the 3 members of the mahjong squad were already the first to rush out. The reduction in their sentences this time was very important for the 3 of them. Apart from special personnel, each person they caught was worth 20 points, and every 10 points could reduce their sentence by 1 year. Judging from the current sentencing standards for these 3 people, each of them would be sentenced to several thousand years or more, so points were very important. Although these 53 people weren't a lot, some of them were extremely strong and belonged to the category of special personnel. Each of these special personnel was worth 500 points, which was the highlight of the show. Thus, the old devil had already locked onto the auras of these special personnel at the base station. Among the 53 people, there were only 4 special personnel with 500 points. If he could catch all of them, that would be 2,000 points, which could directly reduce his sentence by 200 years. As he worked out his plan, the old devil approached the position of the special personnel whom he had his eye on earlier. The special personnel whom the old devil had his eye on was a mercenary whom Night Chief had hired from the Dark Network. He was also a Red A wanted criminal on the run who was currently wanted by Huaxiao Alliance, and was nicknamed Bloody Butterfly. At that moment, not long after Bloody Butterfly scuttled out, a piercing sense of fear directly surged up her back. This somewhat familiar aura instantly made Bloody Butterfly stop flying, and she directly concealed her aura as she hid herself in the mountains below. Bloody Butterfly's stealth technique was profound and unfathomable. She used the mimicry technique to mimic the effects of a spirit beast's camouflage and directly merged with her surroundings. This was a more advanced technique than the invisibility technique because her presence would also melt into the air under the mimicry technique. This was originally an extremely profound escape technique. Bloody Butterfly had used this technique to avert danger several times in the past. But this time, Bloody Butterfly sensed that something was amiss. Even when she used the mimicry spell, she felt a terrifying and familiar aura stick to her like a piece of chewing gum. A shiver that came from the depths of her soul made her twin ponytails tremble uncontrollably. This aura, who on earth was it? Come out, my venerable self can already see you. Just then, the old devil's voice came from behind Bloody Butterfly. At the same time, the old devil cancelled his simple transfiguration spell and revealed his original appearance. This face of the Devil Emperor, who had once shocked the whole of Huaxiao Nation, almost instantly scared Bloody Butterfly into a cold sweat. How could it be him? Chapter 725. There was a frightened expression on Bloody Butterfly's face. In her camouflage state, she didn't dare move at all, but the old devil was already slowly walking in her direction. I haven't really been discovered, have I? Bloody Butterfly was so nervous that a waterfall of sweat was running down her face. When the old devil was less than 30 feet away from her, Bloody Butterfly's footsteps shook as she straightaway cancelled her camouflage and swiftly distanced herself from the old devil. So you're here. The old devil slowly looked at Bloody Butterfly. Bloody Butterfly was so angry that her twin ponytails shook. She realized that she had probably been tricked. This guy hadn't noticed her at all just now. My venerable self only knew your approximate location. I didn't expect to really force you out when I got closer. The old devil chuckled. Bloody Butterfly, sure enough. Those who played tactics had dirty hearts. But it won't be so easy for you to escape from my venerable self now. The old devil pointed at Bloody Butterfly's feet. There was a puzzled expression on Bloody Butterfly's face. She looked down and turned pale. She had no idea when this devil had written a tracking mark on her feet. Had it been the moment she had revealed herself just now? This reaction was too terrifying. Bloody Butterfly felt increasingly nervous in the face of this devil who had once shaken the whole nation. In general, the old devil felt that this Bloody Butterfly was a pretty good opponent. At the very least, it was a good match for his current physical strength. The old devil was still in the process of adapting to this fake body, and his ability to coordinate all aspects of his body had yet to reach saturation. It was a far cry from his original body before he had entered the stone ghost mask. If he wanted to quickly adapt to his body, fighting would always be the fastest way. Usually trapped in prison, the old devil could at most beat up evil sword god. Thus, helping the government clean up foreign terrorists and capturing members of the Dark Network this time wasn't just a journey to atone for his crimes, but also a rare opportunity to fight. The old devil judged that this Bloody Butterfly's strength was around the peak of soul formation level 9, and she was only half a step away from itinerant immortal realm. Although the old devil's current body was an imitation and wasn't at its peak, it still had the strength of an itinerant immortal. Although his realm was higher than Bloody Butterfly's, the compatibility of his physical body was truly unflattering. Thus, the moment he faced Bloody Butterfly, the old devil had already come up with a plan. In this battle, the the best-case scenario was to avoid physical contact. Dark web fugitives like Bloody Butterfly lived on the edge of a knife every day, so melee combat was a common occurrence for them. His body had not fully adapted yet, so he would be at a great disadvantage if he were to engage in a prolonged melee combat. Besides, he was a mage to begin with. He was not used to using Dharma artifacts like swords and sabers, so now the question was, what kind of spell should he use to deal with this Bloody Butterfly? The old devil was at a loss. The Chaos Ball was the technique he was famous for, but in the face of a small dark network wanted criminal, the old devil felt that this Bloody Butterfly was still a little lacking. If he directly took out the Chaos Ball, the old devil felt that this game would be meaningless. If he took out the Primal Chaos Ball, he could fight 10 of them. While the old devil was pondering this, there was the sound of wind in front of him as the Bloody Butterfly attacked. The best defense is offense. This was the final decision Bloody Butterfly made as her body was drenched in cold sweat. A slender, pitch-black shadow scuttled out from under the tree and swiftly circled behind the old devil like a nimble tentacle. Double ponytail stab. This pitch-black shadow was none other than Bloody Butterfly's double ponytails. In order to have one more life-saving magic treasure, Bloody Butterfly had long ago tempered her twin ponytails into a killing magic weapon. This was a surprise attack, but it didn't succeed. The moment the shadow attacked, the old devil had already swiftly made a decision based on his rich experience. A light shield with a spiral pattern quickly condensed around his body, firmly protecting him like an eggshell, perfectly blocking the sneak attack of the shadow. Incorporeal Magic Shield. This was a grade 5 spell. It could block magic attacks. Bloody Butterfly gritted her teeth. Just from this spell alone, she could already sense how troublesome this devil was. The most frightening thing was that the old devil had cast this grade 5 spell instantaneously. Without any hand seals. A spell without hand seals. This was proof that his proficiency in spells had already reached the peak. There was no doubt that this was a fearsome opponent, but Bloody Butterfly didn't give up on attacking. The Shadow's surprise attack just now had just been a feint. A real attack, behind him. Chi! Just then, a blood-red dagger stabbed behind the old devil. Holding the dagger, Bloody Butterfly smiled cruelly. She was about to succeed. Her blood-edge blade was an extremely powerful magic weapon designed for assassination. It had the effect of true damage. Regardless of whether it was a shield or armor, it would be useless in front of this dagger. A substitute? The old devil's face was unruffled. It had to be said that Bloody Butterfly's plan seemed to be going very smoothly so far, and it indeed felt impossible to guard against it. In the blink of an eye, the old devil had created a substitute to feint an attack, and the old devil's real body had snuck up behind him to stab him with the blood blade. This series of movements could be said to be as smooth as flowing water. If it had been anyone else, they might have already been severely injured. But Bloody Butterfly still underestimated the opponent in front of her. The next moment, Bloody Butterfly's smile froze. The moment the blood blade stabbed the old devil's back, Bloody Butterfly felt her scalp tighten as the old devil firmly grabbed her twin ponytails. F***K, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts. The pain of having her hair pulled by a boy in the back row in junior high came back, and Bloody Butterfly's scalp went numb in an instant. She felt like she had been completely led away. The old devil didn't cast any spells, and just grabbed her twin ponytails, instantly reversing the situation. Your hair is pretty smooth, but it's still a little worse than my wife's. The old devil grabbed the twin ponytails and sighed with emotion. General E had promised him before that he would help him activate the Mirror of Reincarnation to find his wife's reincarnation, but there had been no news until now. Now that he had caught hold of these two soft twin ponytails, the old devil was instantly reminded of her. You, let go of me. Bloody Butterfly, who had been caught, had no strength to resist at all. You broke the rules. Aren't you a mage? How can you do such a vulgar thing? It could be said that the old devil's move was completely beyond Bloody Butterfly's expectations. Sure enough, did every mage dream of melee combat? Grabbing Bloody Butterfly's twin ponytails, the old devil cast the weakness magic ring at the same time, and Bloody Butterfly instantly felt weak all over. Affected by the weakness magic ring, Bloody Butterfly said in a weak voice, What do you want to do? Don't worry, my venerable self doesn't want to do anything. It's just that when I touched your twin ponytails, I suddenly thought of my wife. The old devil stared at the limp Bloody Butterfly on the ground, and the smile on his face gradually turned wicked. My venerable self has now decided to cut off your twin ponytails. Bloody Butterfly, are you a pervert? The old devil shook his head and sighed. Even if I am, I'm just a gentleman with the title of pervert. Chapter 726. With her twin ponytails pulled, Bloody Butterfly's eyes turned red from the pain. At that moment, she felt like a rabbit whose ears had been grabbed by a hunter. And the most frightening thing was that this hunter was going to cruelly cut off her ears. These twin ponytails were one of the magic weapons she was most proud of, and now she was actually going to have to say goodbye to them. Bloody Butterfly stared at the old devil in despair. At that moment, she felt that her life was bleak. As a national Red Dark Network wanted criminal, what was she going to face next? At that moment, crystalline tears welled up in the corners of Bloody Butterfly's eyes, but she didn't make a sound, because under the effect of the old devil's weakening halo, she didn't even have the strength to cry. Right now, Bloody Butterfly was facing a situation where it could only be slaughtered. Don't cry, my venerable self is most afraid of seeing a woman cry. The old devil stared at the tearful Bloody Butterfly with a complicated expression on his face. He suddenly recalled the scene when he had just met his wife, Yamai. In class back then, he had pulled Yamai's hair, and in the end, she had cried for the first time. Now that Bloody Butterfly was crying like a pear blossom in the rain, the old devil actually had the illusion that he was looking at his own wife. Bloody Butterfly had thought that after the old devil had vented his conscience, he would at least let her twin ponytails go. Who knew that the old devil's next words would make Bloody Butterfly completely despair? The old devil took a deep breath and said with a hint of longing in his voice, "When you cry, you look just like my wife. Can my venerable self dig out one of your eyes?" Bloody Butterfly was so scared that her tears instantly stopped. She finally realized why this old devil had been able to plunge the entire Huaxiao nation into black terror back then. "Mom, I want to go home." Elsewhere, Qingyu and Evil Sword God's pursuit was also going smoothly. They chased after Bloody Butterfly using the military magic swords that General Bai had given them. Because they were mass-produced by the military, they were all the same in terms of power, and even the sword spirits inside them had been artificially injected. This was an assembly line product, and certainly couldn't compare to custom-made magic swords. However, if the user was a swordsman, they could still unleash great power. Because they were both cultivators of the sword arts department, the two of them were very familiar with the method of riding a sword to chase. Furthermore, General Bai had unlocked Evil Sword God's purple investigative demon eyes this time. If Evil Sword God used it in this chase, those dozen or so foreign terrorists wouldn't be able to escape. Similarly, after Qingyu and Evil Sword God undid their transfiguration spells, these foreign powers and Dark Network mercenaries all cursed in their hearts at the same time. Why were these three big shots who had already been captured working together now? Evil Sword God was relentless in his pursuit. General Bai's original words were, if they could be captured alive, the reward would be full points. If these people resisted stubbornly during the pursuit, they would be executed on the spot, but if they ended up dead, the points would be halved. But Evil Sword God didn't care about this at all. Opening his purple investigative demon eyes, he went forward and started harvesting. In a temporary underground space, 12 people worked together to set up a barrier. They jointly cast an earth magic called the Earth Matrix, using the earth as the foundation to build a solid space. How could it be him? The dozen or so people couldn't help sweating. They had fled separately earlier, but because they were being chased by Evil Sword God, more and more of them slowly gathered together, planning to work together to think of a countermeasure. About 5 minutes ago, Evil Sword God had already killed 5 people, and had used the invisible sword chi in his left hand to skewer their heads one by one like candied haws. Although the barrier had already been set up, the immense pressure from Evil Sword God still made them feel like their throats were being strangled even though they were inside the barrier. However, these people didn't know that this wasn't Evil Sword God's peak state. Although General Bai had allowed the Mahjong squad to participate in the operation this time, he had still restricted the overall strength of the 3 of them. Currently, the Mahjong squad could only display less than 60% of their combined strength. But even so, the murderous aura that seemed to be able to destroy the world was still horrifying. Damn it! They were clearly invaders, but now they had to set up a barrier to save their lives. Evil Sword God has probably already been recruited, a man in white said in a low voice as he looked up with a deep gaze. He was also a member of the Dark Network, and like Bloody Butterfly, he was also a Red A wanted criminal. His nickname was Dark Descendant Coriander, or Dark Fragrance for short, and his real name was Killer Bunliang. Lord Dark Fragrance, what should we do? Someone asked nervously. Now that things have come to this, there's no other way. Only by using the barrier and the strength of all of us can we defend and counterattack. Lord Dark Fragrance, who was dressed in white, said slowly, since we can't win through strength, we might have a chance of survival if we have the advantage in numbers, a human wave tactic. They were all silent, lost in deep thought. Their average strength wasn't weak, and they were at level 3 of the soul formation stage. This was the manpower that Night Chief's Overseas Returnee elite group had been able to gather in a short time after the collective death of their group. But even if their average strength was at level 3 of the soul formation stage, it was still far from enough in the face of someone like Evil Sword God. Soul formation, itinerant immortal, true immortal. The gap between the 3 was like heaven and earth, and they were now like clay chickens and pottery dogs huddled in a dark cellar. This is our last chance. I suggest we listen to Lord Dark Fragrance, someone said at that moment. They looked at each other, and finally all their gazes fell on this Lord Dark Fragrance. The Dark Network man with the code name Dark Fragrance took a deep breath. First of all, I have to say that this is a forbidden spell. It will reduce your lifespan to a certain extent, but it won't be too serious. We need everyone to work together. Lord Dark Fragrance, please speak. We'll all listen to you, the 11 people said in unison. This man called Dark Fragrance said, there are about 37.2 trillion cells in the human body that work energetically every day. The function of this spell is to activate the cells, separate them from our bodies, and then summon the separated cells through a secret array. If used properly, the 12 of us together can summon an army of tens of thousands of cells. Hearing this, the 11 people were suddenly enlightened, because this Lord Dark Fragrance seemed to have originally been a biologist and was very familiar with the structure of human cells. An army of tens of thousands of cells. That's right. There's a white cell army as the main force, and even a priest army with platelets as the main force. Next, I'll summon platelets from my body and use them as the mother, to extract some of the cells from your bodies. Chapter 727. The Cells at Work spell was a forbidden spell that no one had ever seen before, and many of them had never even heard of it. After completing the hand seal, everyone in the underground barrier saw a curse slowly form on Lord Dark Fragrance's arm, and then he swiftly bit his index finger to carve a summoning array into the ground. The array wasn't large, but its composition bewildered a lot of people here, as it was a mixture of Eastern runes and Western curse seals. Some people speculated that this was probably a combination of Eastern and Western spells, or that it had come from the West and had finally been translated into Chinese. Sacrificing one's lifespan to separate cells, activate them, and summon them again, such a method was truly astonishing. About 10 seconds after the formation was formed, a crack appeared on the ground. Layers of dark red blood gushed out of the crack like a fountain of blood slowly gushing out. After that, the blood spring quickly retreated, leaving behind a bloody shadow. The bloody shadow gradually solidified, and a cute little loli wearing a red dress entered everyone's sight. That's right, this is the platelet in my body, the man called Dark Fragrance said. Summoning cells to fight requires a certain amount of preparation time. So we have to summon the platelet first and have it build an even more solid defensive barrier for us. In this way, we can stall for time and summon white blood cells and macrophages to fight. So that was it. Everyone instantly understood. As expected of Lord Dark Fragrance. As a Red A-class Dark Network wanted criminal, while he couldn't compare with 3S-class Red wanted criminals like the Old Devil, the Master of Immortal Mansion and Evil Sword God, he had a lot more combat experience than them. And this summoned platelet was too cute. It was just like his own daughter. This caused the people present to inexplicably feel a sense of fatherly love. If they could survive this time, they had to have a daughter later. Looking at their expressions as they stared at the platelet, Dark Fragrance spoke again. Next, I will use my platelet as the parent body. You will need to rely on the parent body to perform the secondary separation spell, which is much easier than the original spell. Please be sure to remember how to draw the secondary array. Okay. The 11 members of Night Chief nodded. At that moment, someone asked, Lord Dark Fragrance, will our platelets be as cute as yours? Yes. Because of the uniqueness of each person's body, the appearance of the summoned platelets may be different. This has a lot to do with the daily conditioning of the body. If you stay up late for a long time and put yourself in a sub-healthy state, the summoned platelets may appear sick. As soon as he said that, Dark Fragrance saw several people's bodies tremble involuntarily. Some of them put their palms together and seemed to be praying. Ah! Great cultivation God, please bless my platelets to be more adorable. I promise. I will never top up money for Tianmei again. While the 11 Night Chief members were hiding underground with Dark Network member Dark Fragrance, Evil Sword God was also carefully searching for their whereabouts. Just a few minutes ago, these people's auras had all disappeared in an instant. Run? Can you escape? Evil Sword God looked at the human head skewered by invisible sword chi in his left hand and licked his lips. If it weren't for the fact that his abilities were restricted to only 60% of his strength, he would be able to find this group of people even if they hid at the ends of the earth. It was just that it was a little troublesome now. No one can hide from me. Evil Sword God slowly closed his eyes and pointed the candied haw in his left hand at the sky. At that moment, the world was quiet, and he seemed to be sensing something. In the distance, Qingyu, the master of Immortal Mansion, stood on a cliff and narrowed his eyes at Evil Sword God in the air. Sensing killing intent, Qingyu knew that this was a special skill that Evil Sword God had relied on to make his name, and it wasn't a spell. This was a special sensing skill that could only be accumulated by someone who had walked on the edge of hell all year round. By capturing the killing intent in the boundless world, he could lock onto his opponent. As long as you were on the opposite side of the battlefield, killing intent was bound to exist. No matter how well you hid it, it couldn't be erased. Especially now that you already knew who your opponent was. After capturing the killing intent, as long as you eliminated your own people, you would undoubtedly be the enemy. Was this Evil Sword God? The master of Immortal Mansion trembled with fear. This was only 60% of Evil Sword God's battle strength. How terrifying would he be at his peak? Furthermore, Evil Sword God, who had been enhanced by eyeshadow and had let loose, was in stark contrast to the Evil Sword God who had looked very weak in prison. Qingyu felt that it wouldn't be an exaggeration to describe this contrast as a monster. Raising his sword, Qingyu also concentrated his mental strength to the extreme. He then let go of the military magic sword in his hand, and it slowly floated behind him as if it had a mind of its own. So far, he had only caught some small fry, and the special Dark Network members with 500 points were now playing hide-and-seek. But Qingyu had his own way, which was to follow Evil Sword God from behind. The move he was best at was the thousandly sword art, which allowed him to use a spirit sword to take the head of an enemy general from a very long distance. Although this was quite unscrupulous behavior, stealing kills was indeed a feasible method at the moment. There weren't many points for this operation, but as the saying went, every little makes a mickle. Every little he could fight for was naturally a little, and could be used as a bargaining chip to reduce his sentence in the future. At that moment, he saw Evil Sword God slowly open his eyes in the air and point at a piece of land dozens of li away. Hiding underground? Only children would hide underground. The group of people who had fled from Evil Sword God had already been tracked down. But just as Evil Sword God was about to make his move to reap the harvest, the whole fake remains unexpectedly shook at that moment. Earthquake? Evil Sword God and Cheng Yu were both puzzled. Everything in these fake remains was fake, including some natural factors. Logically speaking, it was unlikely that there would be an earthquake, unless it was man-made. While the two of them were pondering this, there was a loud bang, and the ground that Evil Sword God was staring at suddenly cracked open. Covered in blood, a humanoid monster that was dozens of meters tall and looked like a giant Godzilla beast actually crawled out of the ground. Everyone was inexplicably shaken at this scene. One by one, the Huaxiao Alliance cultivators stopped their pursuit. They could sense the aura of this blood-red monster from afar. What's this? Could it be a blood demon? But, why would a blood demon appear here? Elsewhere, in the underground barrier set up by Night Chief, that Lord Dark Fragrance was also frightened by this blood-red monster. More than 10 people simultaneously stared at a fatty. This blood-red monster was none other than this fatty's platelet, Lord Dark Fragrance. How was this a platelet? It was a far cry from the cute little loli that Lord Dark Fragrance had summoned. Was this AF *** King cerebral thrombosis? Chapter 728. In the fake remains, a blood-colored humanoid monster that was dozens of meters tall slowly stood up from the ground, and a thick, dark red liquid dripped from its body like magma. This wasn't magma, but more like a syrup-like substance. Because the fatty's blood sugar was on the high side, this humanoid platelet that had been summoned was actually very sticky. When the viscous liquid dripped from its body to the ground, it immediately stirred up the earth. No matter what it is, take it down. A Huaxiao Alliance cultivator made a move and flew his flying sword in an attempt to kill this giant blood-colored monster from behind. In the end, he was sent flying by the sticky liquid that sprayed from the monster's body. Ah! The cultivator let out a blood-curdling scream as he was directly smashed into a mountain wall in the distance. Although he only suffered some superficial injuries, his whole body was imprisoned by the mucus. This mucus was extremely sugary. What on earth is this? On the other side, the old devil, master of Immortal Mansion Cheng Yu, Evil Sword God and General by all noticed this monster, but they had no idea what it was. This is 7364. This is 7364. Other Huaxiao Alliance cultivators started to call headquarters to ask about this monster's origin. In fact, General Yi and the others in Huaxiao Alliance's command center were also alarmed by this giant blood-colored monster that had suddenly appeared in the fake remains. Old Yi, what do you think? President Qi stared at the image on the screen, his mind churning as he tried to think of something. However, General Yi shook his head. It looks a little like a blood devil, but it doesn't look like one. The only thing we can be sure of is that this thing was summoned. If we can defeat the summoner, it might disappear. President Qi crossed his arms and narrowed his eyes. Can you analyze the substance? This fake remains was a fictional small world that was completely under Huaxiao Alliance's control, so it had a certain ability to analyze the substance of the world. When President Qi spoke, the staff at the command center had already started to analyze the creature. This process was very fast, and only took a few seconds to complete. Finally, the composition of the blood-colored giant was listed in a table and displayed on the screen. Because it had already taken human form, there was water, sugar, fat and other substances in the monster, but there was one substance that made up 70% of it. Platelet. A lot of people were astonished when they saw the results of the report. So, had the platelets become sentient? What's the overall strength of this cerebral thrombosis? President Chi asked. The researchers were blank when they heard this. Cerebral thrombosis? There didn't seem to be anything wrong, such a big lump couldn't be called a platelet at all. It's already been analyzed. His overall strength is that of a loose immortal. He should be at the third stage, a staff member replied. Third level itinerant. It looks like this thing has a parent, and its strength has been enhanced by radiation. President Chi immediately made this judgment. If it was just an ordinary summon, its realm and strength would not be so ferocious. The only possibility was that the crimson monster had a parent. The parent was constantly providing energy for it, and in the end, the overall strength of the monster became stronger. There was actually a special term for such a situation during the summoning process. It was called parent radiation. As a wisdom saint, President Chi had already come to a conclusion. Furthermore, there is a biologist on the list of Dark Network members recruited by Night Chief this time, so everything makes sense. General E frowned. If it's as you say, Old Chi, there's actually no point in simply defeating this monster. President Chi nodded and then said to the staff member at the command platform, tell them that they must find the mother, otherwise this blood-colored monster will keep regenerating. Platelets were cells that could stop bleeding to begin with. Now that they had formed this behemoth, their self-healing ability was naturally top-notch. At that moment, the situation in the fake remains wasn't optimistic. After the appearance of this huge blood-colored monster, several smaller blood-colored monsters emerged from the ground on the side. Although they weren't as big as this cerebral thrombosis, they were still 10 meters tall. They seemed to be guarding something. With the tallest cerebral thrombosis monster as the center, the 7 monsters lined up to form a human wall. Their bodies were covered in a blood-red color with a high sugar content, causing ripples to form on the surface. Their intention was very obvious, and that was to tell everyone, no one was allowed to pass ahead. General Bai narrowed his eyes at the 7 monsters and gave everyone an order. Everyone, don't waste time on these monsters. We have to find the summoner and the mother as soon as possible. After learning that this was a spell called the Cells at Work spell, General Bai immediately understood the importance of time. These 7 monsters were only here to stall for time, their real purpose was probably to summon more cells. If they waited until the white blood cells and macrophages were summoned in human form, the situation would truly be difficult to resolve. Given their current numbers, it might be difficult for them to withstand the rampage of tens of thousands of monsters. Furthermore, this was a huge limitation for General Bai himself. As Explosion Saint, all he could do when the time came was to get rid of all the monsters in one go. Given his current strength, he could blow up the entire fake remains. But when that time really came, his Huaxiao Alliance colleagues would suffer together with him. I'll subdue these 7 monsters. Everyone, hurry up and find the summoner and the mother. They should be hiding underground. Thinking this, General Bai clenched his teeth and soared into the sky, charging toward the largest cerebral thrombosis monster. General Bai spread open his fingers, and an energy cannon shot out from his palm. Explosions were art. Boom! The head of the largest cerebral thrombosis monster was blown off. But it wasn't long before, as President Chi had predicted, after the monster's head was blown off, the mucus on its body swiftly accumulated on its neck and finally formed a new head. The largest one now was codenamed cerebral thrombosis and was a level 3 itinerant immortal. The second was the 15-meter platelet and was a level 2 itinerant immortal. Because its overall color was a little different from the other monsters, it was yellowish and looked very oily, so this 15-meter platelet was codenamed fatty liver. The third was 12 meters tall and was a level 1 itinerant immortal. It was a little smaller than the previous 2, but its chest was extremely large, and it was codenamed myocardial infarction. Looking at this scene from a distance, the old devil felt that all these platelets were mutated species, although the remaining 4 weren't as big as the previous 3, with an average height of only 5 to 7 meters, it was precisely because they were skinnier that they had the shape of their faces.
Thus, 2 of them looked more fierce and sluggish, and were codenamed brainless and unhappy. Of the remaining 2, one was big and the other small. Chapter 729. These were almost deformed humanoid platelets that had been manipulated by humans. Furthermore, it was very clear that they were the type with low IQ. Because they were so large and deformed, their brains had directly mutated. The activated humanoid cells summoned by the cells at work spell should be like the parent platelets summoned by Lord Dark Fragrance, who were very good-looking little Lolas. But it was very clear that these Night Chief cultivators' lives were generally very chaotic, and they lacked proper care, which led to this current situation. Whether it was cultivators or ordinary people, they all needed to pay attention to proper care in their daily lives. While cultivators could go several days without eating or drinking, this was in fact very draining, and it wasn't like there were no side effects. A proper balance between work and rest was the way of the king. But then again, these deformed mutated platelets weren't completely useless. Although they had very low IQ, they had an unexpectedly remarkable defensive effect. It looked like he would have to find a few fat shut-ins to cooperate with him when he used this spell in the future. Lord Dark Fragrance pondered this scene in his heart. Lord Dark Fragrance, can we hold them off? Someone asked nervously. They could already hear the continuous rumbling and explosions coming from above. Furthermore, a true immortal's pressure pressed down on their hearts like 1,000-kilogram weight from beginning to end. The legendary head of the 10 generals, Explosion Saint General Bai, the members of Night Chief and the Dark Network hadn't expected Huaxiao Nation to actually step up their arrangements this time and have the head of the 10 generals personally come out to wipe out outsiders like them. If it wasn't for the extremely strong self-healing abilities of these mutated platelets, they really wouldn't have been able to withstand this pressure. Not only that, in addition to this Explosion Saint, there were also the 3 prison bigwigs who had been arrested a while ago, the Old Devil, Master of Immortal Mansion Cheng Yu and Evil Sword God, waiting for them outside. This battle could truly be said to be a gathering of experts. In order to protect the real remains and eliminate foreign forces at the same time, Huaxiao Nation had really spared no expense this time. Furthermore, it was very likely that they wanted to catch them all in one fell swoop. It's not over yet. The opponents were indeed very troublesome, but Lord Dark Fragrance and the members of Night Chief didn't want to give up. Lord Dark Fragrance took the initiative to control the magic array as he concentrated. It's almost done. The summoning of the activated white blood cells, macrophages and red blood cells is almost complete. I just need a little more time. As long as he could successfully summon these activated cells for battle. The combat ability of the white blood cells was very strong, and with the blessing of the matrix halo of the platelets, it had a very strong recovery ability. Nullifies normal physical attacks. Except for the Old Devil and Explosion Saint, almost everyone else was using swordsmanship. The white blood cells could delay most people. As for magical damage, he could only rely on the summoned macrophages to absorb it. When that time came, it would be time for them to fight back and escape. Of course, even if the plan succeeded, he could still escape. This time, someone was bound to be sacrificed. But as for which unlucky worm it would be, that would depend on one's luck and fortune. Of course, this was all in the future. On the other side, General Bai, the Songhai Prison Mahjong Squad and the cultivators from Huaxiao Alliance who were participating in the battle were all in a bitter struggle. A lot of Huaxiao Alliance cultivators were stuck to the platelet mucus and couldn't move at all. Once someone's movements were restricted, there would inevitably be others who would come to their aid. This mucus was extremely sticky, and at the moment, washing it with water talismans was the best countermeasure. But the problem was that they hadn't expected this kind of situation to occur in the battle this time. The water talismans that the entire Huaxiao Alliance squad and the fake remains had on hand weren't enough. At a time like this, someone proficient in magic had to make talismans on the spot. Instantly, a lot of people turned to look at the Old Devil. In the air, General Bai once again released several giant mushroom eggs to blow up the bodies of the 7 deformed platelets.
Considering the current situation of the battle, it wasn't the right time to use a more destructive explosion spell on a larger scale, since there were Huaxiao Alliance members trapped in the mucus. They had to wait until everyone was rescued. I'll hold them off here, you go draw talismans. While the 7 platelets were recovering, General Bai spoke telepathically to the old devil from 1,000 li away. The old devil pointed at himself, a little unable to believe that he had been called out. My venerable self. He was Devil Emperor Gua Pai. A Grand Devil Emperor actually had to lower himself to draw talismans. If word got out, it would definitely be a joke. 1 talisman, 5 points. Yes, boss. The old devil was instantly motivated. Everyone, they hadn't brought many water talismans, but Huaxiao Alliance had prepared a lot of materials for drawing talismans. Carrying talisman-making materials on one's person was an essential item for every cultivator to survive in the wild. This was in order to deal with situations like this. Many a time, it was impossible to predict which talismans would be used, so carrying materials on one's person in a situation like this was a good insurance policy. Although there was a certain chance of failure in drawing talismans, if they could find a cultivator proficient in magic, that would be the best of both worlds. This would guarantee both quality and success. But the problem now was that it had been a very long time since the old devil had drawn talismans. From the day he had become a devil, the low-level work of drawing talismans had always been handled by his subordinates. Never in his wildest dreams did the old devil expect that one day he would actually be reduced to drawing talismans for other people. While the old devil was pondering this, some Huaxiao Alliance members had already prepared the materials: spirit water, cinnabar, talisman paper and talisman brushes, and even a small table for drawing talismans. We're all in the same boat, the most important thing is to work and earn points. Master of Immortal Mansion Qingyu landed next to the old devil and sighed. For some reason, Qingyu felt a little envious. For them, points might mean freedom in the future, although each of them might be sentenced to more than several thousand years in prison. In the end, every little bit added up. The old devil picked up the talisman brush and smiled bitterly. My venerable self has never been in this kind of situation before, I'll just treat it as accumulating experience. At that moment, the old devil suddenly understood Wang Ling's state of mind a little. An expert's state of mind for doing things and learning in a low-key manner, the old devil couldn't help muttering to himself. It turns out that the young big shot who scared my venerable self half to death back then tempered his state of mind in this kind of environment, and finally became a big shot. The old devil didn't pay attention to what he said, but Qingyu's eyes widened when he heard it. Although they had been sent to prison one by one before, none of them had mentioned how they had been caught. In fact, the most crucial factor was that young big shot. Hence, when Qingyu heard this, he instantly felt that something wasn't right. Young big shot, wait. Qingyu couldn't help speaking telepathically to the old devil. The old devil? Qingyu stared at the old devil. Which big shot is this young big shot you're talking about? Don't tell me he's the same person who caught me. At that moment, the old devil also had an unfathomable expression on his face. The hell? Chapter 730. While the battle in the fake remains was in full swing, it was peaceful inside the real remains. This was the calm before the storm. Wang Ling followed the rest of the group to tour the base station inside the real remains. There were a lot of extinct resource samples collected here, and all kinds of spirit plants were an eye-opener. Each spirit plant was individually protected, and the temperature in the incubators was controlled by a layer at the most suitable temperature for the spirit plant to grow. The one that left the deepest impression on everyone was a spirit plant called Fire Lotus Hybrid. In its normal state, this Fire Lotus Hybrid was pure white, like a white lotus that had grown out of the mud without being stained. However, as the temperature continued to rise, the petals of the white lotus would slowly begin to wither away. But despite its withered appearance, the white lotus wouldn't die right away. Despite its extremely withered appearance, it still maintained a tenacious vitality. In the end, the White Lotus completed an ultimate evolution that transcended the mundane world, and became a true Fire Lotus hybrid. The Fire Lotus hybrid ignored high temperatures and could survive in extremely hot environments. At the end of its life, it would even directly ovulate in its surroundings to give birth to a new White Lotus. Wang Ming had deliberately separated from Wang Ling in order to prevent those two aristocratic young masters from finding Wang Ling. Li Mingyao and Zhou Yuzheng weren't idle either. As they observed the spirit plants, they didn't forget to look for an opportunity to ask teacher Wang Xiao'er's room number in the rainbow glass box. They really wanted to apologize. "Student, do you know which area and number teacher Wang Xiao'er's room is in?" While they were observing, Li Mingyao suddenly put his arm around Little Peanut's shoulder. Little Peanut nodded. "You mean Teacher Wang?" "I know." Hearing this, Li Mingyao and Zhou Yuzheng were delighted. But because this matter concerned Wang Ling, Little Peanut very quickly lost his memory under the effect of the great shielding spell. "Aya, which room does Teacher Wang live in?" Li Mingyao and Zhou Yuzheng. After a moment, Little Peanut scratched his head. "Sorry, I forgot." Li Mingyao and Zhou Yuzheng. Perhaps everyone had this kind of experience. Sometimes, 1 second they wanted to say something, but in the next second, they suddenly forgot what they wanted to say. Therefore, it was not that Li Mingyao and Zhou Yuzheng could not understand. The point was that Little Peanut was already the 8th person they had asked. Moreover, everyone's reaction at the start was to show that they knew, but in the blink of an eye, they forgot about it. What the hell? In the afternoon, the plan for the real ruins was to visit a forest in the east. This time, the research team was directly divided into 2 groups. One of them was responsible for the development of the western region. Now, only the eastern half of the ruins had been explored, and the western region was still in a blank stage. To put it bluntly, this summer camp was just an activity for the students to broaden their horizons. The real purpose was to study and protect Beast King's remains. It was rare for Beast King's remains to be opened, so the research team naturally had to firmly grasp this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Apart from the scientific research team that went to explore the West, about 1/3 of the remaining scientific research team followed the students and teachers. No one knew more about the spiritual plants in the East than the experts of the scientific research team. There were 2 reasons for following the students. One was to make it easier to explain knowledge to the students. The other was to protect the students' safety. In case a student was accidentally poisoned while observing the forest, the team of experts would be able to coordinate with the medical team as quickly as possible and give them advice on how to deal with the situation. There was also an activity in the forest in the afternoon that all the students were looking forward to. Setting up tents. A summer camp without tents was soulless. But considering the environment, Huaxiao Alliance had in fact specially prepared special camping tents for the students' safety. The main reason why the students weren't allowed to bring their own tents was because they were worried that their own tents wouldn't be safe enough and could easily cause danger. All of a sudden, the students in the summer camp were instantly in high spirits. The joy of setting up tents together wasn't something that could be experienced on a camping trip alone. In particular, setting up tents with people you were familiar with, close to, or even liked was doubly fun. But the students were happily setting up tents here. On the other side, 2 people were fretting. One of them was President Dylan, who was mixed in with the medical team. President Dylan had just received intelligence that the members of Night Chief and the Dark Network who had been sent out in the fake remains this time would most likely be wiped out in one fell swoop. Unlike the previous times, this was an almost unprecedented blow, and President Dylan was lost in deep thought. Because of the real and fake remains, the reserve army that President Dylan had temporarily set up after taking over the mess President Bai had left behind had already lost half its fighting strength. If this situation continued to develop, it wouldn't be good for them. President Dylan looked at the young man in the white coat in front of him with a gloomy gaze. This was their bargaining chip. Given the current situation, President Dylan felt that they couldn't delay any longer. They had to act as soon as possible. Apart from President Dylan, the other person who was fretting was Wang Ming. The military tent used by the teachers was a compressed version that had already been set up, and could be used as soon as they were taken out. At that moment, Wang Ming was debugging Head of State 001. Although Head of State 001 was currently invisible, this summer camp was its first test run. As the designer who had personally designed the blueprints for Head of State 001 back then, this test run was of great significance to Wang Ming. But somehow, Wang Ming felt that this Head of State 001 was a little different from the one he had originally designed. There wasn't much difference in its overall functions, and it was very obedient to his commands. But the main problem was that this Head of State 001 seemed to be especially intelligent. Even some of the details were slowly revealed. For example, the fluttering of its eyelids, the trembling of its eyelashes. If it was just a humanoid magic treasure, these subtle expressions shouldn't be this precise. In the military tent, Wang Ming stared at the head of state pretending to be Head of State 001. The head of state, the more he stared, the more incredulous Wang Ming felt. Because after staring for a while, he realized that this Head of State 001 was actually breaking out in a cold sweat. Oh my! Was this an evolution of artificial intelligence? Wang Ming turned pale with shock. This was a great discovery. Chapter 731. There was something wrong with Head of State 001. This was Wang Ming's first judgment after recording it in his little notebook. Furthermore, he was now wondering if there was a possibility that number 001 had been replaced. The current Head of State 001 was really too intelligent. Moreover, many details that had not been tested before were vividly restored. That was a little unrealistic. In the military tent, Wang Ming's gaze carefully swept over this slightly unusual Head of State. After a while, Wang Ming suddenly shouted at the Head of State, "Activate! Super transformation!" The Head of State was stunned for a moment. Did Head of State 001 still have such an operation? But he still followed Wang Ming's request and forcibly activated the super transformation form. After Wang Ming gave the order, the Head of State's figure suddenly grew several inches, and in front of Wang Ming's eyes, he impressively turned into a muscular man. For the time being, this could be considered a super transformation, right? However, Wang Ming had a look of sudden realization on his face at this scene. As expected, there was a problem with this Head of State 001. The original version of Head of State 001 that he had designed did not have a super transformation form. On the other side, the battle at the fake ruins continued. The old devil was indeed the old devil. As the ancient devil emperor who had plunged the entire Huaxiao nation into black terror back then, and a veteran tank mage with the power to fight at both close and far range, he was able to quickly mass-produce water talismans. Moreover, these water talismans were extremely powerful. One of them was equivalent to 5 of the original ones. Water talismans rescued the Huaxiao Alliance cultivators who had been trapped by the mucus on the deformed platelets one after another. General Bai, together with the Master of Immortal Mansion and Evil Sword God, hovered in the air. With Evil Sword God and Chengyu, the Master of Immortal Mansion, protecting them, General Bai was determining the scope of the explosion. After General Bai confirmed that the last trapped Huaxiao Alliance member within range of the explosion had been successfully rescued, he immediately flung out the inescapable net from his sleeve in order not to implicate the innocent. Go! General Bai manipulated the inescapable net to cover Platelet's head. This was a limited edition magic weapon, just like the 3 views shattering hammer which Wang Ling had specially forged for Immortal Jinyuan. However, it was only effective once. After the inescapable net was thrown out, it immediately formed a powerful net-like boundary, enclosing the 7 deformed platelets in it. Because his allies had been trapped previously, General Bai had been somewhat restrained in the explosions. This time, General Bai was going to display true art. As if sensing the heavy murderous intent in the air, the 7 deformed platelets that were standing dumbly on the spot roared at this moment. They had foreseen a crisis. This was also a kind of signal. It was a direct feedback to the summoner that they couldn't hold on any longer. In the underground barrier, Lord Dark Fragrance didn't even frown when he heard the platelets roar. He knew that it was clearly unrealistic to rely on just 7 platelets to stop Huaxiao Alliance. What was more, there was a true immortal keeping watch this time, and furthermore, it was Explosion Saint, the head of the 10 generals. Lord Dark Fragrance was already very satisfied with being able to stall for so much time. Next to Lord Dark Fragrance, the expression of that adorable and well-behaved little Lolita changed drastically at that moment. The mental pressure that the 7 deformed platelets felt was ultimately transmitted to the parent body. The connection between the platelets and the parent body was connected. In theory, as long as the parent body wasn't destroyed, the 7 deformed platelets would continue to survive, provided that there was still room for the 7 deformed platelets. It didn't need to be much, just a little bit of tissue and cells to completely recover. But if the 7 deformed platelets suffered heavy injuries that they couldn't bear and were annihilated in one go, the parent body would be implicated and die along with them. It's almost done. Lord Dark Fragrance knew that the platelets were most likely doomed at this point. He concentrated even more. Just a little bit more. If there was a progress bar, 95% of the summoning process would already be complete. Just 5% more, and the army of white blood cells and macrophages would arrive on the battlefield. All the Night Chief members in the underground barrier shivered as they sensed the powerful killing intent permeating the air. This power was too strong. Was this the power of a true immortal? They had never directly felt the pressure of a true immortal before. Even in Night Chief, the only people who had the right to meet Lord Night Ghost Spirit Emperor, who was also a true immortal, were the internal core president bigwigs and the members of the headquarters. Most people had never experienced the true power of a true immortal. Hence, several Night Chief cultivators couldn't help trembling with fear. A true immortal expert, was this what it felt like to be oppressed by someone with the strongest realm in the world? At that moment, they felt like children who had just come out of a rural village and had just seen the big world, only now realizing how small their horizons had been. Compared with a true immortal, they really were a bunch of laughable frogs at the bottom of a well. The barrier was complete. In the air, General Bai took a deep breath and started to assume a fighting stance that looked like he was about to explode. Seeing this scene, many of the Huaxiao Alliance members immediately knew that General Bai was going to step it up. Standing in the air, General Bai put his palms together. Dozens of seconds later, a ball of golden energy gathered in his hands. He clamped down on this ball of energy and slowly pushed it to his waist. This was the standard posture for accumulating power. Ha! Ha! In a short 5 or 6 seconds, countless qi instantly swirled around this golden energy ball, which grew larger and larger. He's going to fire. A lot of people held their breaths as they watched this scene. In the next moment, General Bai roared, and the energy ball in his hand instantly turned into a golden flood that shot forward like a destructive ray of death. When it hit the ground, all the trees within a radius of 100 li were instantly destroyed, and a huge mushroom cloud rose up. Thick, billowing smoke was firmly trapped within the inescapable net barrier. Many people felt the violent tremors coming from the ground, and were inexplicably alarmed. If it hadn't been for the inescapable net barrier, General Bai's attack just now would have probably spread thousands of li. At that time, the entire fake remains would probably be in trouble. After firing the shot, General Bai heaved a long sigh. He had already controlled the range of the explosion, otherwise at least 70% of the fake remains would have been destroyed by this shot. Although these were fake remains, a lot of resources had been expended in order to capture this group of foreign rebels this time. Thus, the fake remains were public property. As one of the 10 generals, General Bai had to consider protecting public property to the best of his ability, and ultimately recycling it. Environmental protection. Chapter 732. The earth quaked and the mountains shook with this blast. Thick billowing smoke covered the entire inescapable net barrier and didn't disperse for a long time, making it impossible to see what on earth was happening inside. The only thing they could be sure of was that this blast just now had directly flattened the ground, and all the trees within a 100-kilometer radius of the inescapable net had been blown to smithereens, leaving nothing behind. This was a true immortal blast. This was the power of General Bai's blast. The old devil broke out in a cold sweat when he saw this scene. In fact, the fact that the whole of Huaxiao nation had been enveloped in Devil Emperor Gua Pai's black terror back then was just an exaggerated legend. Although his breaking into the national palace in search of the Wheel of Time had indeed been a hot topic for a very long time, it definitely wasn't as terrifying as the rumors made it out to be. After all, he had suffered a lot back then in order to deal with Blade Master Yi Jianchuan and General Yi. It was only when he had been stirring up trouble back then that General Bai had been in seclusion. Otherwise, the old devil believed that even at his peak, he wouldn't have been able to take much advantage of this level of explosive power. General Bai was ranked first among the 10 generals in terms of fighting strength, and General Yi was ranked third. It had already been very difficult for the old devil to deal with third. It would have been really hard to say what the outcome would have been if he had really gone up against this first general. As he recalled what had happened back then, the old devil couldn't help sweating in his heart. But to be honest, he had always felt that this General Bai didn't give him as much pressure as that youngster back then. Although that youngster hadn't used any heaven-defying tricks in front of him back then, that youngster had indeed played a crucial role in the old devil's eventual capture. In his overall plan back then, one had been the Yang absorption array to turn people around, and the other had been the array to summon the gate between worlds. Both of these arrays had been crucial. But because of that youngster, his entire plan had failed. To this day, the old devil couldn't forget the scene of that youngster closing the gate between worlds on his own. Even now, the old devil couldn't help shuddering at the thought. Seeing the deep expression on the old devil's face as he drew the talisman, Qing Yu immediately knew that the old devil had most likely thought of something bad. After a moment, the old devil raised his head and looked at Qing Yu. "I want to know, how many slaps did Brother Qing get when you were arrested?" Qing Yu's face instantly darkened. "How many have you been beaten up?" The old devil thought back carefully. "For the time being, I'll be one." After saying that, the old devil looked up at Evil Sword God, who was in an extremely excited state in the air. "I heard that when this friend was sent in, he was beaten up 3 times. Qing Yu's face darkened even further. He wasn't hit at all. Because back then, it was Jinka who had dealt with him the entire time. That night, the activity in the real ruins was a picnic. The teacher who led the team distributed a simplified version of the Spirit Plant Handbook to all the students. This handbook covered all the poisonous and dangerous spirit plants that the students might come into contact with in this summer camp. After that, after each group set up their own tents, they began to assign little ancestors to carry out the picnic activities. Everyone needed to use the resources in the forest to cook. Basically, it was just wild game stew. There were extinct resources in Beast King's remains, as well as spirit plants that had been cultivated relatively well. The reason why this forest had been chosen was that many of the spirit plants here had been brought in from the outside world by the expedition team back then. The spirit soil in this forest was very fertile, and contained a lot of trace elements that couldn't be found in the outside world. The Research Institute had been analyzing their specific composition over the years, but had yet to crack it. It was precisely these trace elements that allowed many spirit plants that couldn't grow in the outside world to effectively multiply and grow here. Thus, Huaxiao Alliance had taken into account the resources that the students would consume for this picnic. Back then, they had sown enough seeds here, and using some of them up would actually be more beneficial for the growth of spirit plants. Super Chen, Little Peanut, Wang Ling and Dopey Guo were in the same team. The 4 of them moved together and came to a stream. Standing on a rock, Super Chen put his hands on his hips and took a deep breath. "Have you noticed? I feel that the soil here is very different. It's very relaxing, it's especially refreshing." Little Peanut nodded. It does indeed have a very special smell. It's quite refreshing. The soil here isn't ordinary. You don't know this, but it's actually edible," Dopey Guo said. "Edible?" "That's right. Dopigua, I asked a teacher at the research institute just now, and he said that the soil is rich in nutrients and doesn't have any bacteria, it's completely edible. Of course, although it's edible, I heard that it tastes terrible, like chewing salt, and it's very irritating to the throat. Wang Ling, Little Peanut scooped up a handful of soil and sniffed it. This spirit soil had an indescribable aroma. If Dopigua hadn't said anything, he really would have had the urge to eat it. While the picnic was going on, several streaks of light descended from the sky on the other side and arrived at the entrance to the forest of remains. Led by Wuji, the special operations team that Odd Zhua had set up had arrived, and they directly landed here. Fatty Luo was extremely excited. My God, is this the real remains? It was normal for him to be excited. Devil Valley's Beast King's remains was the place that cultivators all over the country had voted to visit and broaden their horizons the most over the years. But because the entrance was only open in Huaxiao Nation, and most of the resources in the secret land were strictly controlled by Huaxiao Nation, coupled with the fact that there were all kinds of extinct resources growing inside, it was almost impossible to get a glimpse of it. The only way was to pass the academician exam of Huaxiao's Academy of Cultivation and Magic Treasures. As long as they passed the exam, they would have the opportunity to enter the secret land with the team when the remains opened. This bunch of kids got lucky. At the entrance to the forest, Odd Zhua couldn't help smiling. This summer camp was really a rare opportunity, especially for this bunch of lucky high school students. Just the fact that they had a summer camp in Beast King's remains was enough for them to brag about for a year. Let's go in, Odd Zhua said at the entrance. He could already smell Shifu. Shifu was inside. But before meeting Shifu, Odd Zhua thought it would be better to find Wu Zhenjuan, who was leading the team, and explain their situation. Fatty Luo was full of excitement. As soon as his front foot stepped into the forest soil, Little Silver immediately cried out in alarm, "Ah! Slow down. Don't step on it." Fatty Luo was startled. Is the soil here also an extinct resource? That's not it, Little Silver quickly shook his head, then pinched his nose. This is Devil King's shit. Chapter 733. Little Silver's answer immediately stupefied everyone. Before entering Beast King's remains, Odd Zhua had done his homework. He had specially studied the eastern part of the map which the scientific research team had already explored in Beast King's remains before this operation. Thus, Odd Zhua knew that the soil in this forest was now of edible quality. This was actually no secret. When the scientific research team had explored Beast King's remains the last time, they had already published information on the National Authoritative Scientific Data website. It was said that in order to confirm the practicality of the soil, the scientific research team had specially invited the gourmet Yuan Zhou to taste it. After eating the soil, Yuan Zhou said that after eating it, his eyes were clearer than before, his back was more comfortable, and even his skin seemed to be a lot more delicate than before. The strong effects were immediately apparent after eating it. However, after eating it, Yuan Zhou also said that if the unpalatability was graded from 1 to 10, this soil could be graded to 11, so before coming to the remains, Odd Zhua had actually been quite curious about how unpalatable this soil was, and had wanted to try it out. But now that he heard Little Silver say this, he immediately broke out in a cold sweat. Why are you so sure? Odd Zhua asked Little Silver. Little Silver pinched his nose and said, if a human cultivator smells this soil, it should be very, very fragrant. But we grew up in Holy Beast Village, and everyone comes into contact with Devil King during the village meetings every year. If we come into contact with Devil King and then smell this soil, it will become very smelly. Like shit. After saying this, Little Silver felt that his words were a little ambiguous, so he hurriedly corrected himself. Ah, no, it's shit to begin with. Odd Zhua, then why did Devil King leave a pile of it here? Little Silver casually tapped his nose aperture to seal his sense of smell, then crossed his arms with the expression of someone who knew. The remains were originally Devil King's tomb.
When he built the tomb back then, Devil King considered a lot of feng shui issues. He had special plans for some spirit plants and so on. It was also because of feng shui issues that His Majesty Beast King decided to build an entire forest. But in order to build the forest, His Majesty Beast King also suffered a lot. Could it be because these trees can only grow in this soil? Fatty Luo deduced. That's one of the reasons, but that's not the hardest part. Little Silver nodded and then said, in order to build this forest, His Majesty Beast King worked the hardest on storing shit. Everyone, for some reason, Ajua suddenly realized that he could no longer bear to look at the fragrant soil on the ground. The evening cookout was basically a DIY meal for the students under the guidance of the teacher leading the team. Most of the teams used local ingredients to make vegetable and spirit fruit soup, and the taste of the soup depended on the students' own combination. The teacher leading the team was nothing more than helping to keep an eye on the students to see if any students would mix poisonous spirit plants into the soup to make the soup. It wouldn't be a big deal even if they found out, but the experience of this summer camp would also count towards their overall learning points. If they mixed poisonous spirit plants into the mix, their points would be deducted and that would be it. And this comprehensive branch would directly affect the evaluation of high school graduation. As they gathered the spirit fruit, Little Peanut came up with a lot of ideas, but Super Chen and Dopey Gua didn't have much of an appetite. The reason was that while they were gathering the fruit, they couldn't resist the temptation of the fragrant soil under their feet and couldn't help eating a bit, but in the end, they almost threw it up. This scene reminded Wang Ling of a very magical lyric. Have you ever eaten fragrant roasted gluten, soil? The truth was that it wasn't just Super Chen and Dopey Gua who had fallen for it. There were also quite a number of students in the team who couldn't resist the temptation of this edible soil and couldn't help sneaking a mouthful of it. Even now, they still felt a little nauseous. In Super Chen's words, this stuff was as salty as dried salted fish that had been fermented in Laoten pickled cabbage beef noodles for 1,000 years. It was salty and fishy, it was a world of difference from the smell. And it was precisely because of this smell that a lot of the students directly lost their appetites that night. While Wang Ling and Little Peanut were preparing their vegetable and fruit soup, they saw a number of students from number 60 high school and other schools leaning against a tree, clutching their stomachs with deathly pale faces, as if they had nothing left to live for. Luckily, I didn't eat it. Little Peanut trembled in fear at this scene and couldn't help trembling. Because Super Chen and Dopey Gua had stopped cooking midway, Wang Ling and Little Peanut were the ones who mainly collected the ingredients this time. In fact, it was Little Peanut who was mainly responsible for selecting and gathering the ingredients. When the team returned, Little Peanut was carrying a bamboo basket on his back, which was filled with spirit plants that didn't look very good. Feather Lin, who had come to visit next door, complained, "What did you choose?" She picked up a strange spirit plant that looked a little like a carrot, black, purple and green, and couldn't help showing a suspicious expression on her face. "Can this thing be eaten? It's so ugly." Little Peanut pursed his lips. "This soil smells fragrant, but it's so unpalatable. We've already had two." When things reach an extreme, they turn in the opposite direction, understand? Ugly things don't necessarily taste bad. Stinky tofu smells bad but tastes good. Feather Lin was instantly speechless after this explanation. Then, it was time to wash the vegetables and boil the soup. Because this team lacked the two important laborers, Super Chen and Dopey Gua, the entire process was relatively slow. When Wang Ling set up the pot, he could already see the aroma of a delicious soup wafting in front of the military tent not far away. The soup had an indescribable aroma, and it drifted very far. Even Super Chen and Dopey Gua, who were leaning against the tree, felt much less nauseous after eating the soil. Everyone's appetites were almost instantly whetted. Who made the soup? It smells so good. Little Peanut stood on tiptoe and looked into the distance. Someone who had gone to join in on the fun and came back replied, it was Teacher Zhai Yin, who led the team. Wang Ling, Zhai Yin? That Zhai Yin who had used a dragon pork chop to almost kill one of the 10 founding generals.
Wang Ling was stunned. Unexpectedly, he noticed from afar that there were actually already people drinking the soup. Furthermore, everyone's faces were brimming with happiness, as if nothing had happened to them at all. Wang Ling cupped his chin and pondered for a while. Could it be that Jia Yin's cooking skills had improved recently? After drinking the soup, the student sighed with emotion. Wow! I've tasted several bowls of soup, but this one is the best. And it's actually salty and flavorful. Most of the soup made by the other teams is sweet. And there's also the fruit soup. Someone complained. Because all the ingredients had been locally sourced this time, they weren't allowed to add any of their own seasonings, which directly led to a lot of people making sweet soup. Now that Jia Yin had made a pot of salted vegetable soup, it was immediately praised by the students and teachers alike. Whoever marries teacher Jia Yin will be too happy. One of the teachers from the other teams praised. Speaking of which, what did teacher Jia add to the soup? Why does it smell so good? Embarrassed by the praise, Jia Yin said a little bashfully, nothing, I just added a grain of soil. Everyone, Jia Yin, I heard from a student just now that the soil was pretty salty, so I thought I'd add a grain of it. I never thought it would be so effective. Chapter 734. On one side, it was a lively picnic before the storm, while on the other side, the battle in the fake remains was still ongoing. In any case, after the old devil and Cheng Yu, the master of Immortal Mansion, talked, they realized that Evil Sword God was actually the one who had been slapped the most out of the three of them, and there was a deep sense of disappointment on their faces. In terms of overall combat strength, the three of them had the strength of a true immortal at their peak. Cheng Yu himself was only half a step away from true immortal, but he had relied on the power of his familiar to successfully cultivate an intrinsic spirit field in advance, and with the advantage of the intrinsic spirit field, he had also been able to display true immortal cultivation. But the two of them never expected that Brother Echo, the eyeshadow in the air, would be the one who had been slapped the most out of the three of them. Hands behind his back, the old devil took a deep breath. He and Cheng Yu's eyes met. They didn't speak telepathically, but in that moment, they had a tacit understanding to vent their anger. When they got back this time, they had to teach this eyeshadow freak a good lesson. In any case, it was a daily occurrence for Evil Sword God to be beaten in Songhai First Prison's special prison cell. That was because this guy had coarse skin and thick flesh, and he cultivated a technique that allowed him to rapidly heal his wounds, so he also had a self-healing constitution. It was just that this kind of self-healing constitution wasn't as frightening as the rumors said about President Bai. Inside the inescapable net barrier that General Bai had set up, everything was broken down into particles invisible to the naked eye, as if not even a speck of dust was left behind. There was a huge pit in the ground, and standing at the mouth of the pit, it was like looking down into an abyss. However, this explosion didn't directly blow up the underground barrier set up by Night Chief's group. The other party was very cunning, and had hidden very deep to set up the barrier. But while the other party hadn't been completely blown up, at the very least, the most troublesome 7 deformed platelets had been completely wiped out. The Huaxiao Alliance members lowered their eyes as they lit candles for the 7 deformed platelets: cerebral thrombosis, myocardial infarction, fatty liver, brainless and unhappy, and big head son and small head father. This incident also served as a wake-up call for this group of cultivators. Even though he was a cultivator, he still had to take care of his body. Moreover, he couldn't neglect the importance of taking care of his body just because he was a cultivator. Apart from practicing techniques, a real cultivator also had to take care of his body and mind. It was common knowledge that the lifespan of cultivators was longer than that of ordinary people. The so-called Golden Core stage of 800 years and the Soul Formation stage of 1000 years were only the normal lifespan that could be achieved in theory. If one did not take care of his body, even the most talented cultivator would easily lose his lifespan. This wasn't like what was written in novels. In fact, in real life, there were plenty of cultivators who died less than 10 years after reaching the Soul Formation stage, and most of them had their days and nights turned upside down, thinking that they had a long lifespan after reaching the soul formation stage, so they didn't have to worry about anything. We have to take good care of our bodies in the future. Even if it's for the sake of the platelets in our bodies, we have to cultivate more diligently and cultivate our moral character. This is the result of overindulging in lust. Someone sighed. There were many kinds of desires here, such as food, sex, wealth, and so on. At that moment, someone couldn't help asking suspiciously, "Do you think there are immortal cultivators in this world who sleep well all day, study in peace, and keep a low profile?" Hearing this, the old devil, evil sword god and Chen Yu couldn't help trembling. They all thought of one person. Wang Ling. The old devil and evil sword god touched their cheeks thoughtfully. This was where Wang Ling had hit them before. Chen Yu raised his hand, then put it down. Chen Yu had nowhere to touch. In the sky, after firing the cannon, General Bai's expression hadn't relaxed at all. He stared at the huge, round abyss in the ground. Pay attention, it's not over yet. He had a strong premonition that something more terrifying than the 7 platelets from before was about to surge out of the ground. Sure enough, as soon as General Bai said this, there was an immediate rumble from below. Pointing at the abyss, the light of evil sword god's purple investigative demon eyes directly enveloped the ground, and the scene below was visualized in the sky, allowing him to clearly understand the situation in the abyss. At the bottom of the abyss, many snow-white guys appeared. They wore peaked caps and held short white daggers in both hands. Each of them had a murderous glint in their eyes. Although they weren't as big as the 7 deformed platelets, it was clear that this group of people in white had immense lethality and destructive power. The most important thing was that there were so many of them. In the blink of an eye, there were already tens of thousands of people in white, and more were emerging from the ground like bamboo shoots after the rain. This is, old Devil Yun couldn't help sighing and narrowing his eyes at such a vast momentum. Back when he had broken into the Huaxia National Palace, there had only been 10,000 people, by Zhu. Cheng Yu was blank. Aren't they formed from white blood cells? The old devil was alarmed. So what was Bai Zhu? Had this unscrupulous author taken it out again and added random words? Everyone, prepare to fight back. General Bai gave the order in the air. These guys were too swift and powerful. Many of them had already scuttled up to try to tear open the inescapable net. He had already fired one shot just now, and he had to wait for the gloves on his hands to cool down completely before he could fire another, otherwise it would be a huge burden on his body. On the other side, the command center was also alarmed by Night Chief's momentum. Not only did they summon platelets, they also summoned a white blood cell army. President Qi frowned as he stared at the image on the screen. In his view, this was pure self-harm. Using the cells at work spell to activate cells for summoning had a huge side effect of shortening one's lifespan. Generally speaking, if you wanted to reduce the loss of your lifespan, it was best to only summon one type of cell. But the other party had not only summoned platelets, but also a white blood cell army, which would double the loss of lifespan. What are they up to? General Yi felt that something wasn't right with this development. One reason is to escape, and the other is to disrupt the situation. President Qi answered quickly. Also, old Yi, I even think that their purpose this time isn't just to realize their own ambitions. What do you mean? General Yi asked. Rumor has it that Beast King's remains has an advanced level 13 secret technique, which can be used to command the world. But we've been on guard this time, and we've put on such a show of force to wipe out foreign rebels. I'm afraid that their real goal has already changed. These people in the fake remains are purely here to disrupt the situation and distract us. At that moment, President Qi suddenly felt very uneasy. But what would their new target be? Was it still number 60 high? President Qi thought. That shouldn't be the case. Chapter 735. In the command center of the Huaxiao Alliance building, President Qi carefully flipped through the official list of Dark Network members. Most of the troublesome people among them had been sent to the fake remains by Night Chief by a freak combination of factors, such as Bloody Butterfly and Lord Dark Fragrance. But President Chi still had a very strong sense of unease, as if an axe had suddenly been hung high in his heart, and the rope connecting it to the axe was already on the verge of snapping. The last time he had felt this strong sense of unease was 6 years ago, before the sudden descent of the gate between worlds. In fact, it wasn't just President Chi, General Yi also had this feeling. This was an ability to foresee danger, which was more or less acquired after reaching the true immortal realm. It was also the rumored sixth sense. Generally speaking, the more advanced a cultivator's realm was, the more accurate their sixth sense would be. Wang Ling's twitching eyelid warning was also a kind of sixth sense. But the twitching eyelid warning was more accurate than a normal sixth sense. If you had to find a flaw, it was that all the dangers foretold by the twitching eyelid warning concerned Wang Ling himself, and he couldn't foresee other people's situations. Wang Ling had sensed grenade-throwing senior immortals' danger before, and that had been through a foretelling dream. Wang Ling rarely had foretelling dreams, and when he did, it would definitely come true. But because he had to prepare for the summer camp and the final exams, he had actually been suffering from insomnia recently. It wasn't that he didn't want to sleep, but that compared with sleeping, studying was more important. As long as you didn't die from studying, you would learn to your death. If you didn't work hard when you were young, you would only be sad when you were old. This was what Father Wang had taught Wang Ling since he was young. Although the two gremlins pen and eraser could do his homework for him, the prerequisite was that he had to have a good grasp of all the knowledge in order to do so. The head of state is here this time. Given his strength, it's definitely more than enough to protect the students. Gazing at the screen, General Yi pinched his mustache as he spoke slowly. Let's hope so. President Chi sighed. While that was true, in the end, 2 fists were no match for 4 hands. The main reason was that they didn't know what on earth the other side was going to do next. But judging from the enemy's movements, President Chi was sure that Night Chief's target this time wasn't just that, level 13 magic treasure. Command Center, pass down the order. Tell all the teachers in the real remains to be on guard and prepare to capture the culprit. President Chi gave the latest instructions to the staff. President Chi had initially wanted to see what this group of people were up to before taking action, but now that he considered that the accompanying students might be in danger, he immediately issued the order to arrest them. President Dylan thought that he could sneak into the team without anyone noticing, but before he could do so, Huaxiao Alliance had already obtained information on Night Chief's foreign forces and Dark Network rebels. After Huaxiao Alliance sent out the order, Wu Xinjuan on the other side received the news right away. The group of Night Chief members and Dark Network members who had been discovered earlier had been separated from the medical team, and even the military tents for the picnic had been specially prepared by Wu Xinjuan. In order not to arouse suspicion, Wu Xinjuan had specially divided the medical team into 2 military tents and had the regular medical personnel act as barbed wolves inside. If this group of people who were to be arrested were all in one tent, it would instead raise suspicions. Thus, the moment he received President Chi's order, Wu Xinjuan immediately sent a message in a branch group called Expert Fishermen. Attention, everyone, get ready to pull in the net. The expert fishermen were all teachers who would be participating in the operation to pull in the net this time, and had been carefully selected by Wu Xinjuan. Zhai Yin and Wang Ming were both among them. So soon? Wang Ming replied swiftly. Wu Xinjuan nodded. The higher-ups think that this group of people may be on the verge of taking action, and may pose a threat to the students' safety, so we have to strike first. Everyone should have already seen the information on this group of people mixed in. When you pull in the net, please remember not to accidentally injure your allies. Alright. Wang Ming nodded. Can Head of State 001 start up normally? Wu Xinjuan asked again. I was just debugging it, but it won't affect its operation, Wang Ming replied. He had just been debugging Head of State 001. Although he still didn't understand which program had caused its intelligence to evolve, since the task had already been assigned, he could only wait for Head of State 001 to complete its task before continuing to study it. From beginning to end, he still couldn't figure out why this head of State 001 had comprehended the super transformation form skill on its own. Wu Zhenjuan, everyone, get ready first. Wait for my signal in 30 seconds. Everyone, keep an eye on the military tents of the two medical teams and move together. All right. What's the signal? SKR. On the other side, President Dylan's infiltration plan had already begun. Because of the change in the master plan, Huaxiu Nation had sent too many people to deal with them this time, and their main target this time was Wang Ming. As long as they could capture Wang Ming first and use him as a hostage, they believed that the master plan could still be carried out smoothly in the end. Just a few minutes ago, they had received the latest news on this Wang Ming from Night Chief. This was information on Wang Ming, but there wasn't much in it. It was a resume from Wang Ming's university days, and he still used the alias Wang Shaoer. The only thing they knew at the moment was that the name Wang Shaoer was fake, and this young man's real name was Ming. As the teacher who was qualified to lead the team into Beast Kings remains this time, it was very clear that this wasn't a scientific matter based on what was written in this information. The more he tries to hide it, the more it proves that his identity isn't simple. President Dylan had already come to this conclusion when he had seen this information. He dared to conclude that this teacher Wang Ming absolutely wasn't an ordinary person. Similarly, President Dylan also had his own branch group. The secret code they had discussed before was a funny emoji. As long as President Dylan sent the funny emoji, everyone would immediately take action. Not long after the emoji was sent, several powerful spotlights instantly shone on the outside of President Dylan's military tent. This was followed by two sharp SKR signals, which were very unpretentious. Dozens of silhouettes instantly surrounded their military tents, not even a drop of water could trickle through. Outside the military tent, Wu Zhenjuan said, SKR. Criminals inside, listen up, you've been surrounded. Please give up your futile struggle and resistance. Otherwise, I'll play Wu Yifun's dry voice. Chapter 736. Wu Zhenjuan was making a lot of noise. Because they were closing in, many of the lead teachers had surrounded the two military tents. A lot of onlookers who didn't know what was going on crowded around them. What's going on? Is this an impromptu performance by the teachers? Someone asked. They had no idea that a bunch of people representing the foreign rebel group Night Chief had infiltrated their ranks. By the time most of the students came back to their senses, the situation was already effectively under control. Everyone, don't join in the fun, do what you have to do. This has nothing to do with you. Several of the lead teachers had taken the initiative to maintain order at the front, because more and more students were coming over to watch, and there was the possibility of unexpected danger. Dopey Gua and Super Chen drank the salted vegetable soup that Jia Yin had served them contentedly as they watched the situation from a distance. Super Chen elbowed Dopey Gua. What's going on? Does your uncle have any information? Dopey Gua frowned and replied, maybe it has something to do with foreign forces. Foreign forces? Super Chen was puzzled. Dopey Gua nodded. Every year, some foreign forces sneak into the remains. I heard my uncle say before that the country is going to crack down hard on them. But I didn't expect them to be so heavy-handed. It can be said that using musical weapons is quite insane. Next to him, Little Peanut pursed his lips and said doubtfully, is it really that bad? Dopey Gua, do you know why there are always some incidents in the music talent shows every year? Those people who look stupid and think they're good at singing go up to show off their voices, but in the end, their singing almost makes the judges flip their tables. Super Chen, why? Dopey Gua sighed. It's because they gained confidence from the musical weapons. Super Chen, Little Peanut, Wang Ling, speaking up to this point, Dopey Gua was suddenly a little curious again. Do you think there's anyone in our class who can sing well? I remember that we have a good singing class activity at the start of next semester. Someone has to lead the singing. At that moment, everyone turned to look at Wang Ling. Because Wang Ling had sung in class with a guitar before, and he had done a pretty good job. Wang Ling, Super Chin patted Wang Ling on the shoulder. Wang Ling, it's up to you. Anyway, you usually don't speak, so it's good to have a few more lines. Dopey Gua, this subject agrees. Little Peanut, this subject agrees. Wang Ling, President Dylan hadn't expected that they would be targeted from the start, and that the other party would treat them in such an inhumane manner. Although they had long heard that the song Wu Yifan hummed when Daoist Wu was bathing was a great weapon, they hadn't expected this Wu Zhenjuan, as Daoist Wu's disciple, to be so savage that he had even preserved his Shifu's dry voice when he was bathing. In an instant, President Dylan's expression changed drastically. If you dare to sing, we'll all die together. The music master, irascible Dharmaraja Daoist Wu, was extremely lethal. No one wanted to test him, not even President Dylan. This was a great killing weapon. As long as the recording was combined with a sound-amplifying magic treasure, it could be used. Wu Zhenjuan was already prepared for President Dylan's words, and he gave the signal again. SKR. 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 As soon as he said this, President Dylan saw the rest of the medical staff in the tent take out earplugs that they had prepared beforehand and put them in their ears. President Dylan, MMP. It turned out that it had all been prepared in advance. At that moment, the soundproofing barrier outside the military tent had already been set up. Next, as long as the dry voice was played, the rest of the people wouldn't be affected. Knock out a bunch of people first. With a smile on his face, Wu Zhenjuan directly threw a magic ball with sound and shadow into the military tent. The moment the magic ball hit the ground, it shattered like glass, and the voice of the legendary melody Daoist Wu Yifan finally rang out from within. It was just a recording of Wu Yifan's bath, but the moment the glass ball hit the ground, it actually turned into a powerful force that could shake the air. Visible sound waves spread out on the spot like pulsing energy waves. For a moment, the Night Chief cultivators covered their ears and rolled on the ground in pain. A few minutes later, the Night Chief members who had been disguised as medical staff were all tied up and carried out. Huaxiao Alliance had specially prepared the immortal binding rope for them this time. The more they struggled, the tighter they got, and it also suppressed their spirit energy. Done. Wu Zhenjuan clapped his hands. Wu Zhenjuan's heart was at ease now that this matter had come to an end. At the very least, he didn't have to worry about the students' safety anymore. His face was dark, and it was impossible to tell whether he was angry or not. He stared coldly at President Dylan. You'll be detained for the time being. I suggest you tell us the truth. We've already applied to the international prison for your detention, and we should get a reply very soon. More than 10 years ago, Huaxiao Nation had specially applied to establish an international prison to deal with criminals who infiltrated from abroad. There were 3 international prisons in the world, and one of them was located in Huaxiao's capital, Jinghua City. In fact, the international prison had been established more than 10 years ago for the sake of today's plan. President Dylan grit his teeth and was very unwilling to give up. He had underestimated Huaxiao Alliance's determination to strike down this time. Ever since he had found out about the fake remains, President Dylan had felt that he should have been more cautious. Although they had infiltrated the remains this time, the other party had been watching them the whole time. This had been a huge strategic mistake. As Night Chief's commander this time, President Dylan naturally couldn't escape the blame. But right now, they still had a chance to struggle, and hadn't lost everything. Because just now, President Dylan had observed that there was one person who hadn't been caught, and that person was none other than that teenage killer, Ghosthead Blade, who had recently been in the limelight among Dark Network members, and was known as Numinous Mother's third disciple. President Dylan narrowed his eyes as he continued to ponder. Sure enough, hiring Ghosthead Blade at a high price back then had been the right decision, even though she was 10 times more expensive than the other Dark Network members. But sure enough, there was a reason for it. At least for now, Ghosthead Blade had become the last hope of the entire Night Chief village. But then again, the moment that sound wave magic ball had been thrown, Ghost Head Blade had still been by his side. But how on earth had she escaped? President Dillon was stunned by Ghost Head Blade's swift and violent reaction. Chapter 737. This knife was extremely fast, and like a shadow, it instantly aimed at Wang Ming's thigh. It was very obvious that this was a planned attack. It wasn't meant to take Wang Ming's life, but purely to incapacitate him and then abduct him. At that moment, Wang Ming was waiting for Wu Zhenjuan's signal. He had thought that all the members of Night Chief as well as the dark network forces they had hired had been captured, but he never thought that one of them would slip through the net and come for him. This Ghost Head Blade had come and gone like a ghost. She had come prepared. But the head of state's reaction was equally fast. The moment the knife light broke open the military tent, the invisible head of state directly attacked without even revealing his killer move. Pa! He had actually caught a white knife with his bare hand, and directly smashed the flying knife to pieces. Looking for me? It was only at that moment that Wang Ming realized that he had been ambushed, and the expression on his face was very different. This person had actually been able to evade Wu Zhenjuan's soundwave magic ball attack. Not only had he escaped unscathed from irascible Dharmaraja Wu Yifan's shrieks, he had also launched a precise surprise attack on Wang Ming. It seemed that this person wasn't an ordinary person. Wang Ming immediately issued an order to the head of state disguised as number 001. Number 001. Capture him alive. It was only after Wang Ming gave the order that Ghost Head Blade, whose ambush had failed, was astonished to realize that there was actually an expert hidden in the military tent. Ghost Head Blade knew that she had been careless, but she was also well aware that this hidden expert was very powerful. Before she had launched the sneak attack, she had clearly scouted out the situation inside the military tent. The problem was that she had only sensed Wang Ming. A lead teacher actually had a personal bodyguard by his side? In a split second, Ghost Head Blade, who had initially been uninterested in Wang Ming, became very interested. Outside the military tent, Ghost Head Blade was hiding in a lush tree 100 meters away from Wang Ming's tent. She was holding a small Gothic umbrella with lace edges. After realizing that there was another expert in the military tent, she immediately pulled out the handle of the umbrella, cut her wrist, and smeared the blood on her left eyelid. Azura eye. When he opened his eyes again, Ghost Head Blade's left eye had changed. His left eye instantly turned red, and under the influence of the blood essence, there was a spirit array engraved inside. Azura eyes. This was the legendary ability that Ghost Head Blade relied on to become famous. It wasn't some strange eye technique. Instead, he had dug out the eye of a magical beast and transplanted it into his left eye to refine it. After the refinement was successful, the transplanted magical beast eyes would fuse with the human body. It would look normal under normal conditions, but once it was affected by the blood essence, it would immediately transform. Facing the mysterious and invisible expert in the tent, Ghost Head Blade felt that it was necessary to use this method based on his battle experience. But something unexpected happened. Ghost Head Blade discovered that even if he activated the eye of the Shura, he could only see an extremely blurry silhouette. He couldn't even see the person's face clearly. He could only vaguely sense a silhouette and a gaze, and the most terrifying thing was that the other party's gaze directly collided with hers, completely undisguised as he stared straight at her. This was the standard look of a hawk looking at a wolf. Ghost Head Blade broke out in a cold sweat. Who was this person? Ghost Head Blade was so frightened that all the pores on his body suddenly shrank. It was just a glance, but Ghost Head Blade was already scared out of his wits. But in the next moment, the figure suddenly moved. He launched a counterattack at a speed that Ghost Head Blade couldn't follow with the naked eye. A tremendous pressure instantly surged into Ghost Head Blade's soul. She felt as if a weight of 1,000 kilograms was hanging over her body, and she couldn't move even half a step from the tree trunk. When Ghost Head Blade came back to her senses, a large, thick, and strong hand was already pressing down on her shoulder. A true immortal expert, Ghost Head Blade instantly despaired. Although she didn't know exactly what true immortal level the other party was at, the fact that the enemy was actually a true immortal was truly beyond Ghosthead Blade's expectations. Who on earth was that Wang Ming? He actually had a true immortal expert protecting him at all times. Was this person the illegitimate son of Huaxiu's head of state? Ghosthead Blade broke out in a cold sweat. Now that she knew that the other party was a true immortal expert, Ghosthead Blade believed that she already had no strength left to resist, but running away had always been her usual tactic. So after recognizing the reality, Ghosthead Blade's first reaction was to break free from the head of state's control. Her shoulder was pressed down, and the aura of a true immortal was exerting on it, causing it to become heavier and heavier. Ghosthead Blade couldn't breathe under the pressure. This was a girl, but she was far more vicious than the head of state had imagined. This arm, I'll give it to you. Ghosthead Blade grit her teeth and pulled hard. Her entire right arm and right shoulder were torn off like beef jerky. Then, dragging her broken body, she swiftly fled, turning into a stream of light that scuttled into the distance. Holding Ghosthead Blade's broken arm, the head of state's eyebrows twitched. Although she was a woman, he hadn't expected her to be such a savage character. The head of state knew of the gecko art. This spell could simulate a gecko abandoning a part of its body to escape when needed, and the abandoned part would later regrow. This was a life-saving method. Many cultivators had learned this technique, but not many could use it proficiently. But the point was, this Ghosthead Blade wasn't using some gecko art. The other party had directly abandoned her arm and forcibly broken free. She's a ruthless person. The head of state threw away the broken arm in his hand and sighed softly. The next moment, he stretched out his hand and directly grabbed in the direction in which Ghosthead Blade had fled. Buddha's palm seal. A moment later, the head of state caught a flying stream of light, and Ghosthead Blade, who had been forcibly shrunk by a spell, appeared in his palm with a frightened expression on her face. Ghosthead Blade knew that she had run into a tough opponent today. This was a grade 7 advanced spell, and was the spell that the head of state was most familiar with and commonly used at this stage. As for the reason why the head of state had learned this spell, it had started when he had first encountered Father Wang's novels. When Father Wang had just started writing novels, the head of state had developed the idea of learning this spell because the updates had been very slow. Back then, the head of state had wanted to firmly grasp Father Wang in the palm of his hand and update his novels, thus, Father Wang had played a very important role in motivating the head of state to learn this spell. Staring at Ghosthead Blade in his palm, the head of state considered whether he should show off other skills. For example, the small black room of heaven and earth, the wheel of sun and moon like shuttles. When the head of state thought about it carefully, he had really learned quite a few skills back when he had been waiting for Father Wang to update his novels and when he had urged him to do so. Chapter 738. It was very obvious that this was an almighty. Holding Ghosthead Blade in her hand in her shrunken form, she instantly felt a sense of despair. Was it all over? Then, she raised her head and finally saw the Almighty's face clearly. In the end, she was scared out of her wits. How could it be him? That young man wasn't even a cultivator, but he was actually this important to Huaxiu Nation. The head of state had personally come forward to protect him. This was simply unheard of. Ghosthead Blade knelt in the palm of the head of state's hand. She had been completely suppressed by that great divine power just now and couldn't move. Who is this? The head of state asked the command center with narrowed eyes. Very quickly, the head of state's internal headset replied, Your Excellency, after investigation, this is a dark network Red SS wanted member called Ghosthead Blade. Ghosthead Blade? The head of state rubbed his chin. It seemed that he had heard this name before. This person is currently the most dangerous of all the dark network members on the run. After that old devil was arrested, this person's reputation in the dark network has skyrocketed. It was a little unexpected that Night Chief was able to hire her this time, President Chi said with a sigh. Now that Ghost Head Blade was under control, President Chi instantly felt a lot more at ease. The uncertainty he had been worried about all this time was this Ghost Head Blade. This was a dark network member they had overlooked. Before entering the real remains, all foreign forces and dark network members had been locked down. It was a mistake on the command center's part that Ghost Head Blade hadn't been counted, and it had almost led to a disaster. Your Excellency, this Ghost Head Blade was my mistake. President Chi bowed his head and apologized. It's fine. In any case, little Ming is safe enough with me by his side. Everything is going according to plan. Gripping Ghost Head Blade in one hand, the head of state gave a thumbs up with the other. But President Chi wasn't relieved by these words. This was his mistake, and punishment was necessary, otherwise he wouldn't be able to convince the public. President Chi decided that after this summer camp was over, he would submit an application to have his salary deducted for 500 years deducted. President Chi, Your Excellency Head of State, Ghost Head Blade is a wanted criminal who has committed numerous heinous crimes and is in contact with many dark forces. We have to watch her carefully. We also want to get some clues about the dark forces from Ghost Head Blade. Princeps quickly nodded. Don't worry about that. I know what I'm doing. But you probably didn't expect that the legendary treacherous Ghost Head Blade is actually a girl. A girl? President Chi was blank. Part of the reason why Ghost Head Blade was so difficult to capture was because of his appearance. Many people's impression of Ghost Head Blade was that he was a tall and skinny man who was as thin as firewood and extremely gloomy. This image originated from the profiling of Ghost Head Blade after many psychologists analyzed his crimes. Back then, these profilers' descriptions of Ghost Head Blade were surprisingly consistent. But now, after capturing the real person, Ghost Head Blade's image was completely changed. President Chi had a feeling that if Ghost Head Blade's arrest was exposed by the media, it would definitely be sensational news. President Chi frowned and replied to the head of state through the command platform, Your Excellency Head of State, you can't be soft-hearted just because the other party is a woman. This person is ruthless and crafty, don't worry, I have tender and protective feelings for the fairer sex. Princeps said. A few minutes later, the head of state suddenly cried out in alarm from the command center. Ah! President Chi, Your Excellency Head of State, what's wrong? Princeps, when I was talking to you just now, I forgot that I was holding Ghost Head Blade. I used a little force. President Chi took a deep breath. Is she still alive? Princeps, already turned into paste. President Chi, after that, disguised as Head of State 001, the Head of State returned to Wang Ming's side with Ghost Head Blade's paste. Shockingly, it was another living pile of human scum, Wang Ming. For some reason, Wang Ming felt that this scene was familiar. Among the first batch of Shadow Stream killers who had broken into number 60 high school, it seemed that Wang Ling had turned one of them into human scum. Sure enough, when Almighties took action, did they all have a special obsession with paste? Wang Ming stared at the paste on the ground and sighed deeply. Wait a minute, but all of a sudden, he seemed to think of something. Speaking of Almighties taking action, Wang Ming thought of something that sounded very nonsensical at first, but was in fact very likely to happen. If Wang Ming had designed Head of State 001, he shouldn't have been so heavy-handed. Head of State 001's power system was jointly operated by the Heavenly E satellite. He had given the order to capture Ghost Head Blade alive just now, so the system would definitely control the power output. Even if Ghost Head Blade was crippled, it wouldn't go so far as to crush him into paste. So to sum up, there was only one truth that Wang Ming could think of at that moment, recalling the various abnormal reactions of Head of State 001 earlier. Wang Ming instantly broke out in a cold sweat. This Head of State, it couldn't be the real Head of State, right? If that was the case, then this Head of State should have been switched before entering the remains. At this speculation, Wang Ming took a deep breath. No, even if this was the real Head of State, he absolutely couldn't see through it. This was a big leader. If he exposed a leader in public, what peaceful days would he be able to live if things got ugly for him in the future? On the other side, the head of state also felt a little uncomfortable under Wang Ming's stare. He steadied his expression as much as possible, tensing every muscle in his face. It was actually the head of state himself who had come up with this plan to swap the raccoon for the crown prince, and he was very confident in his disguise. Now, the real head of state 001 should have already disguised himself as President Han Di, who had escaped from the vaccine company, and infiltrated Night Chief. The head of state thought that his disguise was flawless, but at that moment, he felt that Wang Ming in front of him seemed to have already sensed something. Naturally, the head of state was gratified at first. The person standing in front of him now was Wisdom Saint's disciple, the nation's most powerful brain. Furthermore, he was the only existence today who could possibly surpass President Qi in terms of intelligence. Wang Ming's intelligence kept increasing every year. It was only natural that the most powerful brain like this would find some flaws in him. The head of state comforted himself in his heart. Looking at Wang Ming's doubtful expression, the head of state did his best to remain calm. No, even if he had really been discovered, he had to continue pretending. He was the head of state. If he was exposed in public, how humiliating would that be? Chapter 739. It was still July 31st on Monday in the 15th week of the semester. It had originally been an evening picnic. The plan for the Foreign Force Night Chief and its spontaneously hired dark network members to infiltrate the real remains had ultimately ended with all of them arrested and one person turned into paste. But Wang Ling had an ominous feeling that things weren't that simple. That night, Wang Ming received a new task from the command center, which was to collect a DNA sample from Ghost Head Blade, who had turned into paste, for a data comparison to confirm his true identity. It would have been very easy to compare the data with Head of State 001. He just needed to take a bit of paste and stuff it into Head of State 001's mouth, and it would automatically identify it based on the built-in database in its body. But the current situation was that this head of state 001 was the real head of state. Even if Wang Ming had 1,000 guts, there was no way he could stuff paste into the real head of state's mouth. So in the end, he still had to do it himself. He had sent the head of state away and had him enter patrol alert mode. Furthermore, Wang Ming had no intention of summoning him back until the end of this summer camp in the remains. When was work the most stressful? Of course it was when the boss was around. Huaxiu Nation's Research Institute was an official organization, so who was its boss? Old Qi? Of course not. Come to think of it, Old Qi himself was also a part-time worker. The head of state was the final big boss. But Wang Ming really never expected the head of state to take number 001's place in this summer camp. The head of state had disguised himself very well, but he had also revealed some flaws. If Wang Ming hadn't noticed these flaws, it was very likely that he would still be in the dark now. So the question now was, where on earth had head of state 001, which he had invented, run off to carry out its mission? But Wang Ming reckoned that Old Qi was the only one who could answer all of this. Even if Old Qi wasn't the mastermind, he definitely had the right to be able to trick Wang Ming and almost screw him over so miserably. Wang Ming had almost become the laughingstock of the entire research institute. Wang Ming stared at the paste in front of him and wiped at his sweat as he pondered. The more he thought about it, the more afraid he felt. Fortunately, he had been quick-witted. Then, Wang Ming took out a small silver-gray magic ball and activated it with the spirit energy stored in the ring. The magic ball spun in the air like a top, and then it swiftly split into 8 mechanical arms like a crab. This was an all-purpose experimental assistance robot invented by Wang Ming, codenamed Crab. Prepare to take samples. Wang Ming gave the order, and the crab immediately stretched out its mechanical arm to scan the whole blob. As a result, the crab's spherical body immediately turned red after scanning the paste. It was a warning color, indicating that there might be foreign objects in the sample. Then, Wang Ming saw one of the crab's mechanical arms instantly transform into a pair of forceps, which then pulled out a pitch-black blade from the paste. This is... Wang Ming was almost instantly on high alert. He had a feeling that this blade was dangerous. However, in the next breath, the blade actually turned into a stream of light and flashed in front of his eyes. When he came back to his senses, there was already a knife mark on his cheek, on guard. Wang Ming broke out in a cold sweat. He knew things wouldn't be so simple. As an assistance, the crab naturally had the ability to defend itself to a certain extent. After Wang Ming gave the order, the crab immediately stretched out its mechanical arms to try and control the blade. The mechanical arms stretched out extremely quickly, but the small blade was even faster. The crab's back swing was too long. With two metallic clangs, the crab's two mechanical arms were instantly cut off. Wang Ming grit his teeth. It now looked like things were starting to get dangerous and troublesome. Perhaps this pitch-black blade had been left behind by Ghost Head Blade. It was like a venomous snake. Even after it was beheaded, its head would still retain a powerful venom, and one could be bitten if they were the slightest bit careless. But the next scene made Wang Ming feel that his thinking had been a little too simple, because this blade actually spoke. That lord is finally no longer by your side. The pitch-black blade opened its mouth. It wasn't Ghost Head Blade's voice, but it had the same tone as Ghost Head Blade's. Wang Ming narrowed his eyes and broke out in a cold sweat. You are... I am Ghost Head Blade. The small pitch-black blade continued to speak. No one knows that this is my true body. I once sold my soul to the artifact spirit of an ancient blade and became a fragment like this. As for the body you see, it's just my host. Unfortunately, that cute little loli has the highest compatibility rate among all the hosts I've found. In the end, that lord slapped her into a paste. Wang Ming, speaking up to this point, the small blade gave a cold smile. Hee hee. But that's fine. In any case, that little loli doesn't have much time left before her expiration date. The key is to find the next body. Wang Ming was startled. This actually had an expiration date. I thought that the kid you shared a room with before was pretty good. Then go look for him. Why are you looking for me? This time, it was Ghost Head Blade's turn to be startled. Wasn't that person his student? How could a teacher be so shameless? No wonder Huaxiao Alliance had been unable to determine Ghost Head Blade's true identity. As long as the other party kept changing hosts, there was nothing Huaxiao Alliance could do. In some sense, Ghost Head Blade's method was even more troublesome than that Myriad Faces old man, who was an expert in disguise among the Dark Network members. That was to say, even if Wang Ming could detect the DNA in that paste, he still wouldn't be able to pinpoint Ghost Head Blade's true identity. Ghost Head Blade, alright, now that you know everything about me, if you don't want me to kill you, you have two choices. Wang Ming suddenly wrapped his arms around his chest. What do you want to do to me? Ghost Head Blade composed himself and said to Wang Ming, first, use your skills to unlock Night Chief and all the Dark Network members. Second, you become my new host. I'm so weak, you want me to? That's not very good. Wang Ming's eyes widened in astonishment. The host's ability isn't the key. As long as you sign a host contract with me, even if the host is just an ordinary person, you can obtain cultivation abilities. The only drawback is that if an ordinary person becomes the host, the body's shelf life will be greatly reduced. All the more reason I don't recommend you choose me as your host. At that moment, Wang Ming suddenly looked at Ghost Head Blade seriously. Ghost Head Blade? Wang Ming spread his hands. I'm afraid your IQ won't keep up. Ghost Head Blade. Huaguo Water Curtain Group invests a lot of money every year in the cultivation of spirit plants and the refinement of pills. Super Chin Sked. According to Dopigua's explanation, Lotus Sun clearly had plenty of opportunities to secretly take supplementary lessons. Furthermore, it was likely that she would major in pharmacology when she entered university. As the eldest daughter of Huagua Water Curtain Group, she had a very heavy burden on her shoulders. Speaking up to this point, Dopigua pulled open the curtain to take a look. Sure enough, there were students from various schools crowding outside her tent. Lotus Sun's good looks had always made her very popular. Some of them had come to ask questions, while others had naturally come to harass her. Super Chin pursed his lips. I'm afraid these people are wasting their time on Lotus Sun. I keep thinking that student Lotus Sun already has someone she likes. After saying this, Super Chin looked at Wang Ling for some reason, which made Wang Ling's hand tremble and he break his pen. Little Peanut, Lotus Sun has someone she likes? It should be. Super Chin actually wasn't too sure. And I think this person is in our class. Wang Ling, while the two of them were talking, Dopigua came back from outside the tent with a shocked expression on his face. Little Peanut, what's wrong? Dopigua, Lotus Sun will definitely get full marks for her diary this time. Guess what the title of her diary is? Wang Ling, Super Chen, and Little Peanut. Dopigua, my world's top 500 companies' dad's tutoring on spirit plants. Wang Ling, Super Chen, Little Peanut, everyone was busy writing in their diaries, and Wang Ling's wasn't going well either. It wasn't that he didn't know how to write, but that he always felt uneasy when he wrote. Suddenly, he raised his head. He had a strong feeling that Wang Ming was going to be in danger. Apart from the omen dream, all of Wang Ling's danger warnings were targeted at individuals. But there were times when brothers really did have a very strange connection, even if Wang Ming and Wang Ling weren't biological brothers, and were only cousins. But at the end of the day, the bloodline of the Wang clan flowed through his veins. This signal of danger was very strong, and almost instantly made Wang Ling nervous. He hurriedly looked in the direction of Wang Mingjuan's tent, and sure enough, he sensed killing intent permeating it. He was about to get up, but in the next moment, the world in front of him became clear, and he was actually sucked into a dark space. A moment later, a ray of golden light appeared in front of Wang Ling. It gathered bit by bit in front of him and finally coalesced into a person he was familiar with. Wang Ling hadn't expected the Heavenly Tao Golden Man to show up on its own. The Golden 3-inch Man said, "This is the Heavenly Tao space." Wang Ling sat down cross-legged and stared at the Golden 3-inch Man who was the embodiment of Heavenly Tao. He didn't quite understand what the Golden 3-inch Man was trying to do, his mind-reading ability couldn't work on Heavenly Tao. This was because the Heavenly Tao itself was an existence without emotions. The Golden 3-inch Man, the purpose of my trip here is to warn you that it's best if you don't make a move. Cupping his chin, Wang Ling instantly understood the Golden Man's purpose in coming here. He was probably talking about Wang Ming. The Golden 3-inch Man, this is a tribulation he has to experience in his life. If he can successfully overcome it, the heavens will bless him. But if he is obstructed by external forces, the tribulation he will encounter in the future will be even more troublesome and troublesome. Going against the heavens will never end well. Wang Ling said telepathically, so this is a notice. The Golden 3-inch Man, you can think of it that way. I just hope that things don't develop to the point of no return, otherwise it'll be too late for regrets. For the first time, Wang Ling felt that the Heavenly Tao was quite considerate. Wang Ling carefully sized up the Golden 3-inch Man in front of him and seemed to have noticed something, so he asked telepathically, "You seem different from the Heavenly Tao Golden Man I've seen before." The Golden 3-inch Man instantly broke out in a sweat. Back at the Heavenly Tao conference, he had already said that this guy in front of him was extremely dangerous. Now that he had come into contact with him, the Golden 3-inch Man felt even more apprehensive. After a brief silence, he confessed, "The person who made an equivalent transaction with you before was my dad." Wang Ling was startled. The Heavenly Tao actually had a family, the Golden 3-inch Man. "My dad should have informed you that you were going to make a move, but he didn't want to, so my grandfather beat him up. Now, I'll be the one to inform you." Wang Ling, do all of you look the same? The golden 3-inch man was silent. We're not exactly the same, we're called golden 3-inch men. But a lot of people don't know what it means to be a golden 3-inch man. Wang Ling. The golden 3-inch man, indeed, we're all 3 inches tall, but there's still a difference between the Tower of Babel. The older the heavenly Tao, the longer it is. Of course, it's usually withdrawn into the abdomen. Chapter 741. When Wang Ling opened his eyes again, he was still in the tent. In other people's eyes, he was just in a daze. The heavenly Tao space was a kind of godly domain that ordinary people couldn't touch at all. Wang Ling hadn't expected that the heavenly Tao would actually personally appear this time to tell him not to interfere. At that moment, Wang Ling's gaze fell on Wang Ming, whose military tent was already brimming with murderous intent. Because he had received the heavenly Tao's notice, Wang Ling gave up on his plan to make a move. He tore off a piece of the diary and folded it into the shape of a paper crane. In fact, this was a life talisman that could be used to save Wang Ming's life when his life was in danger. However, the number of times the life talisman could be used was limited. It could only be used on the same person once every 49 days. If the heavenly Tao told him not to make a move, then he wouldn't make a move. It wouldn't be a problem if he helped him out in secret, right? This was what Wang Ling thought. While Wang Ling was still thinking, Super Chen's head suddenly poked over. He had wanted to see what theme Wang Ling had chosen for his summer camp diary, but when he looked over, he realized that Wang Ling was actually folding a paper crane, and his face instantly filled with despair. It's over, it's over. I'm afraid we're all going to fail this essay. Dopey Gua, why are you so pessimistic? Super Chen, Wang Ling has always been the equal share king in our class. Now that the equal share king is at his wit's end with this essay, we're definitely screwed. Look, Wang Ling is so bored that he's folding a paper crane. Wang Ling, Dopey Gua took a look and commented, you don't say, Wang Ling's paper crane is pretty nice to fold. His little heart is quite deft with his hands. Wang Ling, inside the military tent, Ghost Head Blade was already intent on killing Wang Ling. This wasn't just an act of revenge. Because the body of his previous Lolita had already been beaten to a pulp. If he didn't find a new host within 3 days, he would be directly destroyed by the lightning tribulation as punishment. Thus, Ghost Head Blade was determined to get this Teacher Wang. In a situation where the original host's body had been beaten into a paste, his battle prowess had already been greatly reduced. There were many Foundation establishment stage students here, but it was clear that the importance of those students was far inferior to this Teacher Wang. The person in front of him was an existence that was personally protected by that lord. Ghost Head Blade still couldn't quite believe it, but the head of state's action was already enough to prove Wang Ming's significance and value. Moreover, Ghost Head Blade had already set up a barrier. All movements and killing intent within the range of the military tent would be completely blocked. As an ordinary person, Wang Ming couldn't get out at all. Making up his mind, Ghost Head Blade decided to take action immediately. The saber light was extremely fast. In this situation, the other party was definitely not willing to become his host, so there was only one way, forcefully parasitizing. And this method was to kill the person who was about to become the parasite first. This stab was aimed directly at Wang Ming's heart. Against an ordinary person, there was no need for flashy skills. The best way to deal with them was to aim at their vitals and kill them in one hit. Wang Ming stared at Ghost Head Blade and smiled. It won't be so easy for you to kill me, go to hell. The moment it pierced Wang Ming's chest, Ghost Head Blade's heart was filled with joy and excitement. His true form was a pitch-black dagger, and when it was stained with blood, Ghost Head Blade instantly felt extremely comfortable, as if he was soaking in a hot spring bath. But in the next moment, something unexpected happened. Wang Ming, who had already been successfully hit in his vitals, didn't fall, but actually turned into a wisp of sand in front of Ghost Head Blade and disappeared into the air. The next moment, Wang Ming's figure reappeared in another part of the tent. This was Wang Ming's brain deduction technique. Wang Ming, it won't be so easy for you to kill me. This was Ghosthead Blade's first time seeing this technique, and he was indescribably amazed. This didn't look like an illusion spell, and it couldn't be one at all. The young man in front of him didn't have any spirit energy in his body, so how could he cast an illusion spell? The only explanation was that his mind had been controlled. It seems that you have a very high intelligence. Ghosthead Blade stared at Wang Ming and picked up on some clues. He was very experienced and knowledgeable, and could think of the only possibility that could happen to an ordinary person. As long as an ordinary person was intelligent enough, they could use a technique to control other people's brains and create illusions. Ghosthead Blade had first learned about this technique when Wisdom Saint President Qi had battled the demon gods back then. It was just that Ghosthead Blade hadn't expected Wang Ming to actually know this technique. To be exact, this could also be considered a spell, but it didn't consume spirit energy, and was controlled purely with mental energy. Now, Ghosthead Blade suddenly understood why Wang Ming was so valued. This man's entire brain was a treasure. I was careless, but this technique consumes a lot of mental energy. How much longer do you think you can last? Ghosthead Blade sneered from the small pitch-black blade floating in the air. This had hit Wang Ming's sore spot. This was the second time in recent times that he had used the brain deduction technique. The last time was chapter 348. But this battle was different from the previous one, which was when Wang Ming had come prepared. At that time, Wang Ming had deliberately cast the spell ahead of time to cover the entire area. But now, he was using the brain deduction technique in a critical situation. That was to say, no matter how Wang Ming used the spell to avoid Ghosthead Blade's attack, he couldn't leave the military tent. And it just so happened that Ghosthead Blade had some understanding of this technique of his. As Ghosthead Blade said, as long as this battle dragged on, Wang Ming would definitely lose. When President Qi had used the brain deduction technique back then, he had used spirit energy and mental energy to share the damage to the brain deduction technique's mental energy. But Wang Ming couldn't do it. He remembered that the last time he had used this technique, he had instantly fainted because he had overused his brain. Thus, this wasn't a long-term solution. Wang Ming stared at Ghosthead Blade warily. Given the current situation, he could only take a gamble. He shouted, "Someone! Save me!" Ghosthead Blade sneered. "I've set up a barrier around this military tent. No one will come to save you." But before Ghosthead Blade's laughter died down, light suddenly surged from the ground of the military tent. Ghosthead Blade was alarmed. "This is an invisible teleportation array." The next moment, a beautiful figure directly broke through the ground. This teleportation formation was buried underground by Zhai Yin. As a qualified bodyguard, Zhai Yin fully utilized her omnipresence to the extreme. Wang Ming was delighted to see Zhai Yin appear, but he also couldn't help being startled. "What the hell, you're really here?" Zhai Yin grit her teeth. "I've been waiting for you underground for a long time. Hurry up and shout." Wang Ming. Chapter 742. Zhai Yin had appeared just in time. As a qualified bodyguard and a peeping Tom, Wang Ming was already used to Zhai Yin's stalking behavior. He just needed to remember that wherever he was, Zhai Yin would definitely be there. Zhai Yin's appearance also caused Ghosthead Blade to be overjoyed. He now had another option. It was very clear that as someone from the magnificent Immortal Special Combat Brigade, Zhai Yin's physical strength and attributes were far superior to Wang Ming's. This was an excellent host body that was hard to come by, and was even several times better than his previous lowly host. Ghosthead Blade was secretly delighted. If he could obtain this body and then snatch Wang Ming's brain, he would be invincible. Double host, it wasn't impossible. It was just that Ghosthead Blade hadn't been able to find an opportunity before. After snatching this Zhai Yin's body, he would snatch the brain, and finally merge the two into a host body. This bold idea suddenly occurred to Ghosthead Blade. This was Jia Yin's first time seeing Ghost Head Blade's original body, but she was already more than familiar with his name. Back when she had still been in the magnificent Immortal Special Combat Brigade, Jia Yin had once been assigned a mission to hunt down Ghost Head Blade. Unfortunately, the mission had failed back then. Ghost Head Blade had been too cunning, and in the end, he had still managed to escape alive despite being surrounded by so many people. Several years ago, in the failed operation codenamed Project Ghost Hunt, one of the people in the magnificent Immortal Special Combat Brigade had died in the line of duty in pursuit of Ghost Head Blade. This had become an unsolved case that year, and until now, there had been no reasonable explanation for it. But when Jia Yin had been hiding underground, she had heard Ghost Head Blade's original body's account, and thoroughly understood the whole story back then. Back then, Ghost Head Blade had probably abandoned his previous host and forcibly formed a contract with that colleague who had died in the line of duty, and in the end, escaped undetected. The space inside the military tent was truly limited. Previously, Jia Yin had tried to break through the barrier set up by the Ghost Head Blade underground, but to her surprise, she had failed. Given how weak Ghost Head Blade's current body was, it shouldn't have been possible for him to set up such a powerful barrier. Hence, Jia Yin had been particularly cautious in her head-on confrontation with Ghost Head Blade in this battle. She was certain that this Ghost Head Blade definitely had a trump card that he hadn't used yet. In the blink of an eye, the Ghost Head Blade attacked again. His target was already Wang Ming, and Ghost Head Blade was sure that in order to protect Wang Ming, this female Special Forces soldier in front of him would definitely be at a disadvantage. Dang! There was a crisp sound of metal colliding. Jia Yin swiftly unsheathed a tactical military knife from her boots and sparred with Ghost Head Blade. For a moment, Ghost Head Blade launched a relentless attack, and Jia Yin used the tactical military knife to block it with all her might. Her arms, which she brandished rapidly, turned into a series of afterimages in front of Wang Ming's eyes, like countless flailing tentacles. "You're from Magnificent Immortal, right? It's been a long time since I've seen this blade technique." Ghost Head Blade chuckled as he attacked. Because it was just a small, pitch-black blade, no matter how Jia Yin slashed at it, the Ghost Head Blade did not feel any pain. After all, he was now a fragment of an ancient saber. Even if it was just a fragment, it was too naive to think that a mere tactical saber could deal with him. The incident back then, it was indeed you, Jia Yin frowned. She was well aware that the tactical military knife had a limited effect on Ghost Head Blade. Continuing to drag things out definitely wasn't the way to go. In this kind of battle, physical exhaustion was a big taboo. In this form, Ghost Head Blade could ignore the problem of physical exhaustion and injury, but it was different for them. Furthermore, she now had to use a clone to protect Wang Ming. For a moment, Jia Yin felt the greatest pressure. But it was her duty to protect Wang Ming. Even if she had to put her life on the line, Vanguard Blade. At that moment, Jia Yin's eyes darkened. She bit her finger hard and smeared blood on the tactical military knife in her hand. The next moment, she tossed the tactical military knife up, and it actually transformed into a blade array in the air, splitting into countless shadows that enveloped her and Wang Ming. In this way, Ghost Head Blade's plan to target Wang Ming had already been mostly dispelled. However, the duration of this saber array would not be too long. Before the blade array ended, Jia Yin had to think of a countermeasure to kill Ghost Head Blade in one blow. Special circumstances required special treatment. Jia Yin already couldn't care less about capturing Ghost Head Blade alive, especially now that Wang Ming was in danger. All she had to do was directly execute the criminal on the spot. But contrary to Jia Yin and Wang Ming's expectations, when Ghost Head Blade saw Jia Yin's blade array light up, he actually stopped his frenzied and fierce attack. "Looks like it's about time." Ghost Head Blade smiled faintly. Jia Yin glared at him. "What do you mean by this?" As soon as she said this, Ghost Head Blade's body glowed with spirit light. In an instant, a dark purple multi-edged crystal appeared in the air. Jia Yin's eyes instantly widened. "This is..." Wang Ming didn't say anything, but he already knew the origin of this polygonal crystal. This was currently the latest technology developed at home and abroad, but which had yet to be made available to the public, magic crystal technology.